Chapter 636. The sky seemed to be shrouded in glass, sprinkling a faint golden glow. Living Buddha Sure Shan sat on top of the lotus platform, quietly looking down at Lu Cheng without any intention of speaking. Instead, the illusory figures of bodhisattvas and wisdom kings surrounding him moved their lips, chanting scriptures. Their chanting was muffled, just like what visitors would hear during morning and evening classes in the temple. Ethereal and solemn chants reverberated. Lotuses bloomed one after another, emerging from the mud but not tainted. They were pure and clear but not demonic. They had transcended the mortal world and were detached from the secular world. Lu Cheng wasn't fooled by such a strange scene. The ice lake was still, without ripples. In his perception, within a radius of 5 meters with himself as the center, there was no lotus or bodhi. There was only the light of a pale glaze that was gentle and faintly discernible. However, as long as this boundary was exceeded, the Pure Land would descend and the Buddhist kingdom would appear. The living Buddha's spirit has reduced the effect of my enemy heart freezing move and the size of my territory to this extent. Lu Cheng's expression was solemn. His thoughts raced as he considered his current situation. It was said that the succession of the living Buddhas involved the inheritance of spirit. It was similar to the possibility that the descendants of physical invulnerability experts might be born with supernatural abilities. There was a theoretical explanation for the latter. Just like how words and symbols could express the meaning of one's predecessors, the composition of one's genes could also express the information left behind by one's predecessors. This was a memory rooted in one's body. From this perspective, the living Buddha seemed to be traceable as well. However, the current research on spirit was still lagging behind. Everything was just speculation and unproven. It was said that the military had been trying all sorts of methods to get Daxing Temple to release the secret art of reincarnation of the living Buddha. Unfortunately, they had never succeeded. A living Buddha who had undergone empowerment was born with a strong spirit. When he cultivated the womb realm and Vajra realm, it was as though he had already mastered it in his previous life. However, he was unfamiliar with it now. Once he was slightly familiar with it, he could immediately get the hang of it. It was no wonder that some seniors had speculated that the selection of a living Buddha reincarnated spirit child had the most basic requirement, which was to be gifted and able to withstand the empowerment. Such a child would only appear once every 20 to 30 years. If it wasn't discovered in time, one could only choose a disciple with good potential to inherit the title of living Buddha. When he had mastered the secret art, he would find a spirit child to perform empowerment. This was also the reason why the living Buddha lineage was at a low point. Back then, Daxing Temple took advantage of the chaos in the world where spirit children were hard to find. And Tantra, the largest lineage of Tantric Buddhism for 2 generations, to find an opportunity to swallow them. While his thoughts were running wild, Lu Cheng calmly formed red, light blue, golden, light purple, and blazing white fireballs. He let them circle around his body and dance. As soon as the 5 flames were formed, the Buddhist kingdom suddenly darkened. The night sky suddenly turned upside down and sprinkled on the earth, embellishing the pitch-black curtain. However, this didn't dilute the Pure Land. Instead, it made it more dreamy and sacred. The living Buddha lives up to his name. In the live broadcast studio, although the scene the host saw wasn't as realistic as Lu Cheng's, he could vaguely see scenes described in various Buddhist scriptures. Beside him, the old Taoist with a bun nodded in agreement. More than half of the living Buddha's abilities lie in his spirit. At this moment, the referee standing at the edge of River Heart Island raised his right hand and announced, "Begin." Along with this sentence, the chanting of scriptures in Lu Cheng's ears grew louder and clearer. It calmed his mind and body, making it difficult to summon his fighting spirit. Controlling his body became several times more difficult. What was even more frightening was that he seemed to have entered the slow motion of a movie. Everything around him slowed down, frame by frame, like a dream. In the distance, the golden body living Buddha sitting on the lotus platform suddenly appeared in front of him. He solemnly raised his right hand and pressed it down from above. The palm's 5 fingers were spread open and shone brightly, covering the sky and sealing off all gaps. It made the area Lu Cheng was in seem independent, making it impossible for him to dodge or escape. Such a scene made Lu Cheng feel as though he had stepped into a Buddhist scripture. He felt as though the exaggerated myths and legends were really happening around him. If he hadn't read the notes of the battle between the physical invulnerability experts of the Longhu Club and the Living Buddha, Lu Cheng would have thought that his opponent's divine arts had disrupted time and cut out an independent space like a cage. But now, he was very clear that the inconceivable mysteries of this palm came mainly from the suppression and influence of the mind. It was hard to distinguish between what was real and what was fake. Bodhi Mantra. This was a unique skill of the womb realm that could only be mastered by the Living Buddha, who had a strong mind and unique characteristics, through empowerment. At this moment, what the audience and the live audience saw was different from what Lu Cheng saw. In their eyes, the Living Buddha Sure Shan was merely stepping on the pale golden Buddha's light. In the scene of it blooming like a lotus, he approached his opponent in one step, raised his right hand, and pressed it down slowly and heavily, as though he was going to press his opponent into the ground and seal him. Facing the huge golden Buddha palm that couldn't be avoided or resisted, Lu Cheng suddenly gave up on the enemy heart-freezing move. He took the initiative to draw the fighting formula that was full of battle intent and unyielding. His chi and blood boiled, and the feeling of depression and sluggishness were swept away. Lu Cheng bent his back, retracted his force, and balanced his dantian. This time, he didn't move the stars to complete the fighting formula. He merely grasped the charm. Bam! His dantian chi exploded, and his fist blasted upwards like a launched rocket. He straightened his body, as though he was going to soar into the clouds and break through the heavenly palace. Even if his palm covered the heavens and earth, even if the Buddha's will couldn't withstand it, even if the path ahead was hopeless, he would force his way through. Never give up, fight heaven and earth. Under this will and aura that connected the inside and outside, the huge golden Buddha palm in Lu Cheng's eyes shrank rapidly. It no longer covered the heavens, but became traceable and returned to the mortal world. Boom! Lu Cheng's fist rose like a real dragon and collided with the pure and untainted Buddha palm. Golden light burst out from the impact, and the other party's arm rebounded and leaned back. At the same time, his thoughts flashed. He wanted to gather the crimson, golden, light blue, blazing white, and faint purple swirls behind him and smash them out as one. He wanted to use the 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descend of the sun to break the Living Buddha's spiritual territory. However, just as he thought of this, the clear and restored Sure Shan's figure in front of him suddenly pulled away. He moved from 2 meters away to the peak of Mount Meru in an instant. He fell back onto the lotus platform, and the distance between him and Sure Shan turned into a faraway place. Lu Cheng recovered his enemy heart-freezing move, but he could only sense the situation within 5 meters. Beyond this distance, he wouldn't be able to tell if the Living Buddha in front of him was real or fake. If he blindly used 9 rotations of 5 flames, Descend of the sun, he would only exhaust himself for nothing, and it would be a huge drain. Just as he thought of this, the rapidly circling crimson, faint purple, and other fireballs slowed down and continued to revolve without any difficulty. It wasn't until this moment that Lu Cheng's mind flashed back to his earlier encounter, and he gained some understanding. Thought steal. The Living Buddha used thought steal to hear his thoughts in advance and avoided them as if he had foreseen it. This is really a bug-level ability. Daxing Temple's Womb Realm Division's thought steal was equally difficult to master. Most of the time, the disciples could only scratch the surface. Even Wisdom King, Zhi Hai, had only reached the level where he could sense the true emotions of others and detect clues. In the current world, other than the Living Buddha, Sure Shan, only the abbot of Daxing Temple, divine monk Fa Yuan, who had practiced silent meditation for decades, could truly master it. In the live broadcast room, the host watched as Lu Cheng and Sure Shan separated after a brief exchange of blows. The former's 5 flames, which had been ready to be unleashed, calmed down, while the latter pulled a distance of 20 to 30 meters within a second. The Living Buddha avoided descent of the sun in advance. Following which, he answered his own question, thought steal is really mysterious. Furthermore, Lu Cheng's control of the five flames is as light as a feather. I've only seen it on the Dragon King. To be able to forcefully retract and rebalance when he's about to release it, that's no simple feat. As the host rambled on, the silver-haired old Taoist beside him tried to open his mouth a few times but couldn't find a chance to interrupt. Being very polite, he didn't want to interrupt the host and could only quietly play the part of the background. After a short exchange, both Lu Cheng and the living Buddha, Shi Shan, had a more direct impression of each other's style, strength, and standards. At this moment, the living Buddha didn't approach. Instead, he continued to sit cross-legged on the lotus platform at the peak of Empty Meru. His hands formed a seal and his lips opened and closed. Om. Ma. Ni. Ba. Mi. Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. The six-syllable Sanskrit mantra was fully executed. P.S. I have to travel in the afternoon. That night watch should be before midnight. Begging for a guaranteed monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. Chapter 637. One Mani Padme Hum. One Mani Padme Hum. Living Buddha Shi Shan chanted faster and faster. The glazed golden light around him grew brighter and brighter. It was as though something between heaven and earth was being triggered by the six syllables, glowing in layers. Lu Cheng could only hear the buzzing of the incantation in his ears. An obvious emptiness appeared in his head and his body gradually lost strength. Every bone, every joint, and every muscle seemed to have been sealed. They were all slowly being tightened. His spine bent bit by bit and his back arched. It was as though he was bearing the weight of several mountains. Movement was so difficult that even standing seemed like a luxury, not to mention controlling the faint purple and golden fireballs around him. The six syllables of Sanskrit had the ability to suppress and seal. It was known as the supreme technique left behind by Buddha in the past. Seeing that the five flames were about to disintegrate, Lu Cheng couldn't care less. While the suppression was still light, he turned his back, clenched his fist, and punched forward. Golden, faint purple, and light blue colors gathered and followed the wind of the punch, smashing into the ground. An extremely bright, blazing white light exploded, instantly illuminating the surrounding pure land of Buddha's light, shattering it into pieces as though it was being swallowed. Rumble. The loud noise shook the entire Jiangxin island, dispersing the chanting of One Mani Padme Hum. At this deafening moment, Lu Cheng felt an unprecedented sense of peace. His mind was no longer blank and the shackles on his body were being unlocked one by one. He was breaking technique with brute force. He was breaking the secret technique of Buddha with the power of reality. At this moment, the spectators on the ship saw living Buddha Shi Shan, who wasn't far from Lu Cheng and had escaped the most violent effect of the 9 rotations of 5 flames, taking a step forward. Going against the wind and waves, he approached his enemy. Around him, the Buddha's light exploded. It was bright and pure, forming an apparition of Vairocana that was a few meters tall. It was an apparition that was almost real and had fused with the actual body. This Buddha's face was full of compassion and compassion. He extended his huge right palm and pressed it towards Lu Cheng as though he was swatting a fly. It was the Vairocana body, the fundamental technique shared by the Great Light Scripture, Womb Realm, and Vajra Realm. At this very moment, Lu Cheng had just broken free from the light and sound of the 9 rotations of 5 flames. He turned around amidst the wind, waves, and flames. Suddenly, he saw that the entire sky was occupied by a golden Buddha, and it was still expanding rapidly. In that instant, Lu Cheng felt as if the earth he was on had become a precious jewel in front of the golden Buddha, not to mention himself, who was so small compared to the earth. Immediately after, the Mahavirakana, who was full of majestic appearances, stretched out his palm and pressed down. Lu Cheng took a deep breath. He still hugged ice and fire to his lower abdomen and moved the stars to form the fighting formula. Bang! The air around him exploded, and he also became huge. His muscles were bulging, and his skin was greenish-black. Every part of his body was filled with explosive power. Kacha! Lu Cheng turned his back and clenched his fists. He tore through the air barrier and hit the huge golden Buddha palm like a mosquito. Rumble. Lu Cheng's feet sank more than 7 inches into the ground. However, the golden Buddha's palm rapidly shrank and was momentarily suspended in midair. Now was the time. Lu Cheng didn't attempt to break free. Instead, he seized the opportunity and arched his back. Darkness appeared around him. Coldness pervaded the air, and the stars sparkled brightly. This was his ultimate move, Cosmic Phantom. There was no gap or obstruction between it and the previous moves. It was as if he had been mentally prepared for this. Lu Cheng didn't use the 9 words formula against the 6 syllables of Sanskrit mantra. Instead, he relied on the 9 rotations of 5 flames, which drained a lot of power. He wanted to give the living Buddha a chance to attack at close range. His powerful mind and Bodhi mantra had shrunk Lu Cheng's senses to a range of 5 meters. Even if he wanted to exchange long-range attacks with the enemy, he wouldn't be able to tell the difference between reality and illusion. He wouldn't be able to suppress the living Buddha like he did with Exa and Xiaoye. Therefore, he deliberately showed weakness and dealt with it simply. He wanted to draw the battle into the realm of close combat and use his rich experience to search for opportunities to win. As Lu Cheng straightened his back and raised both his hands, the starry sky shifted upwards. Darkness covered the palms that were still emitting a faint golden glow. Layers of crystal-clear ice condensed and sealed the Buddha's palm. Vairocana lost its mystical appearance and reverted to the big-headed and thick-necked Sher Shan. This was the first time Lu Cheng truly saw his opponent since the start of the battle. Although he could grasp the enemy's figure within a range of 5 meters during the short exchange, he couldn't see his actual appearance. Like a flash of lightning, the layer of ice spread rapidly, sealing the living Buddha Sher Shan within. This confirmed Lu Cheng's suspicions. The complete version of Thought Steel was also limited by distance. In fact, it was only effective within a range of a few meters. His previous thoughts were hidden from the living Buddha. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the dark universe, the stars flew out and crashed into Sher Shan, who was in the ice. At this moment, the living Buddha, who had yet to lose his consciousness and control of his body, suddenly erupted with layers of golden light. They transformed into a huge lotus flower that first bloomed and then formed a bud, completely enveloping Sher Shan. In an instant, the surrounding ice block seemed to have become heavier and plummeted, bringing the living Buddha away from most of the stars. Rumble. 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 Streaks of red light flashed like dense rocket launchers. Explosions sounded one after another. With both feet on the ground, the living Buddha, Sher Shan, was no longer as sacred and dignified as before. The ice layer around him shattered and even melted into water. The lotus flower formed by the Buddha's light also dissipated, leaving many tattered spots on his yellow warrior monk robe. On the other side, Lu Cheng had already broken free from the ground. He stood there, judging the timing and accumulating his strength. Every joint, every muscle, and every tendon in his body was making muffled noises. The sound was dense and shocking, and the snow that suddenly fell from the sky was also stacking up in the air, quickly forming a white divine mountain that seemed both real and illusory. Bam! Just as the living Buddha was about to land, Lu Cheng clenched his fist and punched forward. The few meters between them were filled up in an instant. Rumble. The accumulated strength in Lu Cheng's body burst out like a flood. The snow mountain around him collapsed with a loud bang. Accompanied by the wind from his punch, it rushed towards the living Buddha in a mighty manner. This was a variant of the ice sect's snowstorm, the real mega avalanche. The ice sect didn't only have control and martial arts that could gradually influence the opponent, they also had secret arts for strong attacks. The only problem was that they took too long to prepare. Faced with the collapse of the snow mountain, Sher Shan didn't have time to react. He could only take a deep breath, expand his body, gather the Buddha's light, and transform into the simple wisdom king with indigo skin. He smashed forward with all 6 arms. Rumble. White flowers flew in all directions. The mega avalanche paused for a moment before continuing forward, leveling the pothole. Sher Shan took advantage of the pause and dodged pathetically, avoiding the mega avalanche. However, before he could widen the distance, Lu Qing closed in again. He spread out his arms, coordinated with his legs, and launched a round of aggressive attacks. He couldn't let the living Buddha leave this area again. He used mental suppression and the Bodhi mantra to regain control of the situation. Bam, bam, bam. Lu Cheng's fists were burning with a faint purple hue, showing a heavy and scorching intent. His attacks were extremely aggressive, burning off Sher Shan's sleeves and charring his skin. On the other hand, the living Buddha stood firmly on the ground, neither swaying nor swaying. Fist against fist, foot against foot, he did not show the slightest sign of weakness. The negative effects and the burning effect of the fire force seemed to have disappeared without a trace. With his feet as the center, cracks appeared on the ground. Each crack had traces of being burned. Lu Qing attacked crazily for a while and gradually reached the point where he needed to catch his breath. Seeing that the living Buddha was still as unmoving as a mountain, another plan flashed through his mind. Take the initiative to change the rhythm and find an opportunity to use the formation formula. Bam! Lu Qing swung his right fist to the side, wearing a faint purple flame glove, and ruthlessly smashed it on Sher Shan's charred forearm, causing his muscles to tremble slightly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Qing took the initiative to swing backwards. Just as he was about to quickly use the formation formula, he suddenly thought of the living Buddha's thought steal. He knows that I will use the formation formula. Lu Qing followed his instincts and withdrew his Dan force, distancing the stars from the darkness and causing the edges of the universe to become colder. Another art of control, Lament of the Ice Queen. Bam! Lu Qing took another step forward and struck out with his palm. Sher Shan, who was about to turn around, stopped abruptly and raised his hand to push back. Thought Steal can indeed hear my thoughts, but if I change my mind in a split second, he might not be able to react in time. Lu Qing seemed to have discovered something. His palm strike was so resolute. Bam! Amidst the dull thud, the living Buddha's surroundings burned with glassy flames. They were instantly frozen, suspended in the air like a work of art. However, they quickly collapsed. Bam bam bam. The collapse of the guardian glassy flames prevented Sher Shan from being sealed by the layer of ice. He took a step back and his expression turned solemn. Seeing this, Lu Qing raised his other hand and formed a seal. He said in a low voice, "Formation." At the same time, the living Buddha, Sher Shan also said solemnly, "Wang." The Buddhas will intensified and the air became tame, not turning into a cage. Bam! The living Buddha took a step forward, his expression solemn and his gaze indifferent. He struck out with his palm as though he was looking down at Lu Qing. Lu Qing suddenly felt a sense of danger. Just as he was about to dodge, he suddenly became dazed. He felt as though he had become a monk reciting scriptures and fiddling with prayer beads all night long. He seemed to be devout and focused, but he would always pause inadvertently as though he was thinking of a certain someone, prostrating on the ground, kowtowing step by step in a pilgrimage, but the image in his mind wasn't of Buddha, ostracized, far away from home, unable to find peace. Fragments of memories appeared one after another, causing Lu Qing to experience thousands of years in an instant, experiencing the incomplete lives of generations of living Buddhas. This made him feel as though his memories were in chaos and he was mentally and physically exhausted. Finally, after much difficulty, he outlined the confrontation formula. His body and mind were clear, but his spirit was also drained. The figure of the living Buddha before him became clear. Lu Qing made a turn to avoid facing him head-on and was about to use the simplified wholeness formula to refresh his status. However, at this moment, his sense of danger suddenly emerged. Before he could react, he felt a chill on his forehead. Sher Shan's thick palm had already pressed down on his forehead. The living Buddha's figure re-outlined, his expression calm. Lu Qing stopped in his tracks and understood the reason. Just now, his spirit was drained and his ice heart broke. Even if he was within 5 meters, he was still confused by the illusion. At this moment, the referee announced loudly, the living Buddha wins. P.S. Before 12 a.m., please guarantee the minimum monthly votes. Chapter 638. As expected of the mysterious living Buddha. Hearing the referee's announcement, Lu Qing stopped drawing the outline of the wholeness formula, stood up straight, and cupped his hands in greeting. Living Buddha Sher Shan smiled and put his palms together. He chanted the Buddha's name softly. Despite his young age, he had the air of an eminent monk. He turned around leisurely and walked to the side of River Heart Island. After a few steps, he suddenly paused, rubbed his stomach, and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. After doing all this, he pretended to look around casually and quickened his pace. He didn't take the boat but walked directly on the water. He returned to the ship where Daxing Temple was and took the prepared vegetarian meal from the hands of the little monk who came up to him. As he ate contentedly, Sher Shan thought helplessly that as a living Buddha of Tantric Buddhism, he actually had to abide by Daxing Temple's commandments and eat vegetarian. Lu Qing rubbed his throbbing temples, walked to the side of the boat, and jumped on. He didn't cause any turbulence or ripples. Once the boat started moving, he couldn't help but look back at River Heart Island. He replayed the previous battle. The living Buddha's realm and standard were indeed much stronger than his, especially in the field of mental strength. He could have beaten his current self, and he had fully utilized this trait. It wasn't difficult for him to win. With his current strength, he had barely touched the edge of second pin. He was able to win against Wang Ke because of his rich experience in life and death battles. Not to mention his outstanding performance on the spot, the key to his victory was that Wang Ke wasn't used to his ice and fire as one, and fusion of martial arts and cultivation, fighting style. He was caught off guard by certain moves and suffered a loss. If they had immediately fought a second or third time, the outcome might not have been the same. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Lu Qing reassessed himself and returned the little bit of arrogance he had accumulated since he made the great leap back to its original form. This mentality was not something that could be used for the rest of one's life. As one's strength increased and one's victories piled up, pride and arrogance would still quietly grow. One had to constantly wipe one's heart and soul. Almost all the experts more or less had similar problems, and the Dragon King's conceit was even more obvious to the extreme. After reviewing his battle and himself, Lu Qing approached Longhu Club's ship. He pressed the button and leaped up, landing firmly on the deck. He took his phone, ring, wallet, and other items from Amen. At this moment, Yen Zhika had already sent a message. Looking up at the sky, rolling my eyes, she said, "I feel like you were tricked by the Bodhi mantra in the end, yes." Lu Qing turned sideways to Amen, using his body to block any possible line of sight. He sent an emoji of dark clouds over my head, squatting in the corner and drawing circles. "You can start comforting me now, but why do I feel that you don't look too sad?" Yen Zhika replied with a blank expression. "Ah." Lu Qing scratched his chin and said, "Maybe it's because I was mentally prepared. Anyway, I haven't been eliminated yet. Not liking to lose is one thing, but knowing one's own limitations is another. I'm not depressed now, but I'm suddenly filled with motivation. I can't wait to watch the replay and study the living Buddha's fighting style in depth. I can't wait to have another match with him. That's a good attitude. Come, let me give you a kiss." Yen Zhika said, half complimenting and half consoling him. She quickly changed the topic. "Is the living Buddha's mental strength very powerful? His penultimate palm strike is similar to the heart reflection punch of the Theravada sect. They both imprint their own feelings into my heart. However, the living Buddha's methods are more profound. The heart reflection punch can only transmit specific feelings like pain, torture, and distress. But he can pull me into his memories and experience 1,000 years in an instant, experiencing the lives of generations of living Buddhas. If a person below the physical invulnerability stage were to encounter such a situation multiple times, they might break down on the spot or have a split personality. That's why the Bodhi mantra is also known as the Bodhi mantra." Yen Zhika's beautiful eyes rolled up as she speculated with great interest. Experiencing memories and experiencing life. "Cheng, do you think the reincarnation of the living Buddhas is related to this Bodhi heart mantra? But it's more complicated and has stricter Dharma access. Lu Chen glanced at it and replied with an emoji of taking in a deep breath, hey, you don't say. I think it's possible. Coach Yen has a great eye. When the reincarnated soul child was not found, the previous generation of living Buddha would use the disciple with the best potential as a substitute. However, it would be impossible for them to perform the complete enlightenment. At such times, using a simplified version of the Bodhi mantra might be a backup plan to ensure continuity. Hee hee. Yenjika laughed and said, don't think about it. Let's talk about it after some rest. Someone is exhausted. I'm going for my morning exercise, okay. Lu Chen waved goodbye and put the diamond ring back on his finger. He adjusted it so that it was facing up. He looked at the horizon subconsciously and saw the red clouds burning. Dusk was coming and the sun was setting in the west. After Yenjika put down her phone, she flipped open the blanket and got out of bed. After washing up, she changed into a white martial arts suit with black edges. She rubbed the ring on her left hand and adjusted its position slightly. She went downstairs quietly and ran towards the lawn under the faint light of dawn. At this time, the sky was still dark. A little orange light appeared in the distance and slowly expanded. After a nap in the car, Lu Chen was full of energy again when he returned to the hotel. Through the TV screen, he watched the battle that night. Peng Liyun had turned the tables and defeated the opponent who was stronger than him. He stood firmly in the team that hadn't been eliminated. Renli was lucky to meet an opponent who was slightly weaker than her. After a tough battle, she won again. She was one of the few martial artists who had maintained a winning streak since the beginning of the competition. While watching the battle, Lu Chen was in a good mood. He checked the news and peeked at his own forum. He was not disappointed when he saw that everyone thought it was natural for him to lose to living Buddha. He just objectively analyzed the gap between them and looked forward to the speed of catching up. 2 more years. Maybe only 1 more year. At 9:30 in the evening, the last match of the 4th round came to an end. There were only 44 martial artists left who had not been eliminated. When the 5th round was held the day after tomorrow, the top 32 would definitely be determined. This was because the majority of the survivors were currently bearing a loss. 10 minutes later, the organizing committee broadcasted the 5th round of the lot drawing ceremony. The first one was Renli from Kongtong School. Then Renli's opponent was announced. Wu Qiao from Shushan Study. Lu Chen was delighted. He switched to the group and tagged Renli. The strong opponent you were hoping for is here. This was the leader of Shushan Study, the mighty one with the most titles, King of Swords, Wu Qiao. Of course, most of his titles were won before the era of the legendary twins. Later, due to old age, his condition began to deteriorate. He had only won 1 title in the competition between Warrior Sage and Dragon King. Renli quickly appeared and replied with shining eyes, he's my idol. To be able to compete with your idol in the arena is also a dream come true. Lu Chen echoed emotionally. Taoist sword, Wu Qiao was a pure and powerful swordsman. He lost his left hand and half of his leg in a life-and-death battle in his early years. He was considered to be at the end of his martial arts career and had no hope of further improvement. However, with his terrifying willpower, he broke through the shackles and created the legend of King of Swords. In the past 20 years, all swordsmen more or less regarded him as a role model. Just as Lu Chen finished his thoughts, Peng Liyun appeared and said, not bad indeed. I also hope to meet a long-awaited opponent. Who's your long-awaited opponent? Asked An Chaoyang curiously. Peng Liyun thought for a while and said, there are too many. It's hard to give an example. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He replied with disdain, priest, I think you're as good at making lame jokes as my brother-in-law. Just as he finished, Peng Liyun's name was read out by the guest. Then, his opponent was confirmed. Daxing Temple, Zhi Hai. Wisdom King, Zhi Hai. Another battle of the Heavenly Sons. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Peng Liyun typed out a message. He didn't even consider the possibility of being eliminated if he lost another match. At this moment, Lu Qing heard his name. He quickly focused and looked forward to his opponent. After a while, the guest flipped a piece of paper and showed it. Shengqing Sect, Warrior Sage, Qian Dong Lu. F***CK. Do you have to be so ruthless? Facing the big boss in the last round. Lu Qing didn't know if he should be depressed or happy. At this moment, and Chaoyang reminded him. You're in the 18th match. Maybe you won't have to fight Warrior Sage. Enough people have been eliminated before. Same goes for Priest. The 17th match might not even happen. In the first 16 matches, most of the participants had lost at least one match. In fact, 9 of the matches were between them. There was bound to be someone eliminated. As long as another 12 were eliminated, the 5th round would be over. Makes sense. Lu Qing suddenly felt a little disappointed. After they finished their discussion and went to do other things, Renli suddenly appeared again and asked, "Who's your brother-in-law?" "The guest who drew the lot seems to be the sect leader of your sect, Priest. Where is he?" She was too excited and agitated just now. P.S. Guaranteed monthly votes. Chapter 639. Keeping his emotions in check, Lu Qing sent the results of the draw to Yenjika. Covering face expression, I'm about to experience the highest level below the forbidden level. This was the representation of the strongest combat strength among the physical invulnerability experts. After lamenting, he said truthfully, "It's a pity that I might not be able to participate in this round. I'm sure there will be enough people in the earlier rounds." After a few seconds, Yenjika, who had been worried about this, replied, covering mouth expression, "I feel like you're trembling in fear and looking forward to it. You masochist." Without waiting for Lu Cheng's reply, she added, sitting obediently expression, "This feels like a dream. 3 years ago, if you had said that your goal was to face the warrior sage in a few years, I would have cheered you on while laughing at you mercilessly. Life is indeed like a dream. To be honest, I haven't thought about how far I'll go in this master battle. It'll depend on my luck," replied Lu Cheng. Snickering expression, "Since that's the case, it's not a bad thing to take the opportunity to find the gap between myself and the top physical invulnerability experts." "Yeah, Cheng is the best," replied Yenjika, half cheekily and half approvingly. While she was busy with her studies, Lu Qing skimmed through the highlights of warrior sage Qian Dongluo's last 30 matches. What if they really meet in the 5th round? Even though it was just a quick glance, Lu Qing couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. There was only one thought in his mind, so King awesome. It wasn't that he hadn't watched Qian Dongluo's matches in the past. The matches between the warrior sage and the dragon king were replayed repeatedly and still popular. However, from the perspective of an opponent, a physical invulnerability expert, he felt different when he observed this once-in-a-thousand-years genius. Xin Xiaoye had fused the death sect and surpassed her predecessors. Her lethal chill was intimidating. Wang Ke had a deep understanding of martial arts. His normal punches and kicks were already much more powerful than those of the same level. His physical invulnerability moves were faster and more powerful. The living Buddha had a strong spirit and many tricks up his sleeves. It was hard to tell what was real and what was fake. These were the characteristics and strengths of the few physical invulnerability mighty ones that Lu Cheng had fought before. And the warrior sage, Qian Donglu, had them all. He was no longer a potential grandmaster or a future grandmaster. He was a grandmaster in name and in reality. He had created many martial arts, and all kinds of secret arts were terrifyingly pure. He had returned to the origin. After watching the battle videos of the warrior sage, I feel a chill in my heart. Lu Qing picked up his phone and sent an emoji to Yen Zhika with tears of laughter. "I'm going out for supper to calm myself down." After he changed his clothes and was ready to go out, Yenjika replied with an emoji of holding back her laughter, "Come, let big sister rub your head." I heard that the crayfish in Juku is very good. You can try it. A few seconds later, she sent an emoji of squatting in the corner and drawing circles. I was wrong. It's already November. There's definitely no meat left in the crayfish. I've been studying too much recently and forgot about this. Haha, I've already thought about it. There's a barbecue stall here that's not bad. If it's comparable to the barbecue in Shushan, I'll take you there next time. Lu Qing put on a pair of black-framed glasses that covered half of his face and a brown baseball cap. He took his phone and wallet and checked himself in the mirror at the entrance. After confirming that he looked good, he opened the door and walked out of the hotel. He didn't want to disturb Amen. There was no need to trouble her assistant with such things. The autumn wind was rustling and the night was chilly. Lu Qing followed the GPS and walked 2 streets in a strolling manner. Finally, he saw the brick factory barbecue. He saw that the roadside tables were filled with people at the same time. Business is so good. The food should be good. Lu Qing muttered. He walked over and found the waitress. Are you eating here or taking away? The waitress asked in an orderly manner. Lu Qing felt the refreshing autumn wind and answered with a smile, I'll eat here. Then you'll have to suffer a little. The waitress said embarrassedly, look, we don't have any more tables. How about we give you a stool to put the barbecue on? It's just right for you to sit on a small stool. Lu Qing looked at the plastic stool. He pondered for a few seconds and said, sure. A mighty one with physical invulnerability, the heavenly son of China, was sitting on a small stool with a blue plastic stool in front of him. Lu Qing was in a daze at first. Then, he took a picture and sent it to his little fairy. It feels like doing homework at the door when I was young. Back then, in order to watch the children play, he would bring out 2 stools, one high and one short, and sit in the open space outside the corridor to do his homework. He would do his homework for a while and play for a while. Before Yenjika could reply, his eyes were suddenly covered by a black shadow. He looked up and saw a tall and fat man standing in front of him, holding a small stool and a plastic stool in his hands. The fat man was wearing a gray plush hat and a black short-sleeved t-shirt. Although he hid it well, Lu Qing recognized him at first glance. He was the living Buddha, Shi Shan, who had just defeated him in the afternoon. Living Buddha, Shi Shan. Shi Shan had just sat down when he felt someone sizing him up. He followed the line of sight and was stunned. Lu Qing. In the background of the barbecue stall, the 2 of them stared at each other and didn't speak for a long time until the waitress came over and asked, what would you like to order? Lu Qing was stunned for a few seconds and said, 20 sticks of beef, 20 sticks of pork ribs. Shi Shan followed closely and said, 20 sticks of potatoes, 20 sticks of eggplant. After announcing their dishes, they paused for a moment. Lu Qing and Shi Shan suddenly laughed and were no longer restrained. Ha, I didn't expect to meet you, Shi Shan said casually. Lu Qing shook his head and laughed. After changing the way he addressed Shi Shan a few times, he said, I also didn't expect Master to come to such a place personally. Shi Shan was silent for a while before replying, that sounds a little weird. Just a casual remark. Lu Qing laughed dryly and didn't say anything else. They weren't familiar with each other and lacked the foundation to continue the conversation. But should I take the initiative to pay the bill later? Do physical invulnerability experts care about this? It's just a matter of a few barbecue skewers. Lu Cheng's thoughts flew and he was in a dilemma. He picked up his phone and shared this matter with Coach Yen for guidance. However, Yen Zhika was in the middle of an important lesson and didn't reply immediately. After a while, the waitress served some of the barbecue skewers. The streaky pork shone brightly and the aroma was strong. Shi Shan couldn't help but swallow his saliva at the small table opposite him. Lu Cheng was amused and recalled that Living Buddha only ordered vegetarian dishes. He couldn't help but tease, Master, do you want to eat? From the memory fragments you passed on to me, Tantric Buddhism doesn't abstain from this. Shi Shan's expression changed slightly and he sighed with a smile. Some monks in Tantric Buddhism, let me put it in words that you can understand. In order to see through killing, they advocate entering into killing. After experiencing it and understanding it, they can achieve great enlightenment. So, it's fine for master to eat meat skewers. After all, it's to see through. Lu Qing smiled and asked knowingly. Sher Shan shook his head slightly. What I mean is that this is wrong. It's just an excuse for your own enjoyment and mistakes. Experiencing it doesn't mean you have to do it yourself. Everything in the world is there for you to look up to. That's true. Lu Qing replied thoughtfully. He then smiled and said, anyway, generations of living Buddhas have experienced eating meat. Master, you're also experienced. It's not a loss. Yes, it's not a loss. Sher Shan sighed. How can modern spices and modern culinary skills be compared to ancient times? I pity you. Lu Qing didn't say what was on his mind. Instead, he recommended good food. There's a vegetarian restaurant in Gaofen called Yalu. The meat dishes they make taste the same as the real thing. Master, you can try it when you're free. Following that, the two of them chatted happily. When the barbecue skewers were served, Lu Qing took a picture and sent it to his little fairy. At this moment, Yanjika finally had a chance. Stunned expression, she said, the big monk is so greedy. In the end, he met a primary school student doing his homework at the door. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. He quickly typed, please show some respect. These are two mighty ones with physical invulnerability. After replying, he raised his head and saw Sher Shan looking at him with a weird expression. Haven't you seen other people showing off their love? Lu Qing cursed in his heart. Soon after, he remembered that the living Buddha in the memory fragments also had feelings. Sher Shan laughed and said, love is easy to find, but it's hard to find long-term. I don't like to hear this. Lu Qing organized his words and said, nothing in the universe can last forever. It's the same for stars and living things. If that's the case, why do we have to hope for a relationship that won't change? Life is short. As long as we can maintain our love for a little longer than this, it's fine. After a moment of silence, Sher Shan picked up the barbecue and said, almsgiver, your words are quite sharp. After saying that, he stood up and turned around to leave. I thought master would say a few words of wisdom, said Lu Qing, slightly surprised. Sher Shan's face was very young, and his expression was a little mischievous. However, he gave off a feeling of weariness. I won't say it, I won't say it. It's hard to say it. He shook his head, carried the barbecue, and walked away slowly. Lu Qing stared blankly and felt that Sher Shan did have the demeanor of an expert. At this moment, the waitress came over. Looking at Sher Shan's back, she said, you're paying for his bill. Huh? Lu Qing was dumbfounded. This monk didn't pay the bill. Where's the conscience of a monk? After being laughed at by Yanjika for more than a day, Lu Qing welcomed the 5th round of the double elimination competition. Renli, who was the first to fight, lost to the King of Swords, Wu Qiao without any chance to retaliate. After the first 16 rounds, there were a total of 11 eliminated participants. Peng Liyun had no choice but to go on stage and challenge the Wisdom King, Zhi Hai. This battle was unusually intense. There were a few times when Lu Qing thought that Peng Liyun could turn the tables, but the Wisdom King easily resolved the situation. In the end, the Wisdom King won without any controversy. With Peng Liyun's elimination, Lu Qing entered the top 32 and didn't face the warrior sage, Qian Donglu. At 9 p.m., the draw for the top 32 began. He heard his name in the second round. Longhu Club, Lu Qing. When Lu Qing sat up straight, his opponent appeared. Guanwai League, Lu Yongyuan. God-slaying saber, Lu Yongyuan, the man with the potential to become the King of Swords. P.S. Damn, after returning to Sichuan, of course I have to accompany my parents. Their schedule is very different from mine, so I'll have to put up with them for the next few days. That's why the update times are sometimes early and sometimes late. Chapter 640. As a veteran fan of professional matches, the moment he heard his opponent's name, all sorts of information about him appeared in his mind. Lu Yongyuan was the champion of the Guanwai League, a first pin expert who had dominated for more than a decade. He was a quarter Russian, and his facial features were well defined. He was quite handsome, and his eyes even had a faint green tint. Ever since he turned 30, his hair had been combed back neatly. Even though he had aged a few years, he looked more like a leader. Lu Yongyuan was born in the martial arts school system of the Yanzhao League. He was only a year younger than Dong Baxian, and in that era, he was as famous as Dong Baxian, just like Peng Liyun and Ren Li in the first 2 years of the university martial arts circle. It was just that his reputation was limited to a smaller circle and wasn't as well known. After reaching the Dan stage, he was roped in by the Guanwai League in his hometown and left his alma mater. If he had kept a low profile, no one would remember him, and no one would slander him. However, he grew stronger and stronger day by day. Therefore, the hatred and disgust of the supporters of the Yanzhao League grew by the day. They felt that he had betrayed them and was a complete traitor. If he had stayed in the capital and formed a double insurance with Dong Baxian, and with the cooperation of the first pin experts like Lin Shuyao, the Yanzhao League today would have been able to compete with the Longhu League, Shangqing League, and Daxing League. Lu Yongyuan didn't care about this. In an interview, he even said that being condemned by the public would only make him stronger. This was the truth. He was the kind of martial artist who would perform better in bigger situations. The stronger the enemy he faced, the stronger he would be. He had once slain both the warrior sage and the dragon king when they were in perfect condition, leaving behind a beautiful story. This was also the origin of the nickname, God-slaying saber. However, other than the God-slaying saber, he was also known as the nervous saber. When he encountered an opponent of the same level but not as strong as him, he was often listless, unexcited, and absent-minded. As a result, he became the title-level expert who had been defeated the most times. Because of this, he had only received 2 titles in total, and they didn't include the warrior sage and the king. Regardless, the God-slaying saber was one of the few big shots in the martial arts world. In the hotel where the Guanwai League was staying, Lu Yongyuan, with his slicked-back hair, was lying on a deck chair on the balcony. Outside the window, the night was dark, and the lights were bright. He closed his eyes and gently tapped the dark green scabbard beside him with his right hand. The world-famous God-slaying saber was placed inside as if it was quietly sleeping, waiting for the moment when the wind and clouds converged. In the living room, which was separated from the balcony by a door, the big-screen television was broadcasting the drawing ceremony for the top 32. The sound was very low and almost indistinct. When he heard his name, Lu Yongyuan paused in his tapping of the scabbard. He didn't open his eyes. After a short pause, his right hand began to tap the dark green scabbard again. It was slow and natural, with a long rhythm. Outside, the autumn rain was hazy, dripping against the window, complementing each other. In this kind of silence and peace, there was suddenly a low and clear sound of collision from the dark green scabbard, as if the saber inside was jumping with joy. The clanging sounds converged into a dragon's roar that seemed to come from the depths of the sea. As soon as the results of the draw were out, many posts appeared in Lu Cheng's fan forum. All the good names are taken by Dog's expression, said, covering face and sighing expression, it can't be helped. The top 32 of every title battle are mostly made up of peerless experts and a small number of ordinary physical invulnerability experts who have recently maxed out their luck. It seems that Lu Cheng's luck has come to an end. He didn't draw Ren Li and the others. Since that's the case, it doesn't matter who he fights. After all, it's not his home ground, so he doesn't have any geographical advantage, said a plumber eating mushrooms. Eternal Nightfall, Yan Shaoling quickly asked, I heard that on this road, passerby A likes to fail miserably. Moreover, he fought hard to eliminate Liang Yifan in the 5th round and suffered serious injuries. My senior should have a chance of winning, right? For a physical invulnerability expert with that kind of injury, he will recover in a few days. Don't expect that. Road to the arena mercilessly dispelled Yan Shaoling's fantasy. Laughing Tears expression, said, if God-slaying Saber wasn't injured, with his usual performance, it's not impossible for him to lose to Lu Qing due to carelessness. But now that he's injured, he will definitely be more cautious and careful. In this case, Lu Cheng's chances are slim. It's a bad thing that the opponent is injured. Nye Chi didn't expect such an explanation. It's better to watch a title battle with an attitude of appreciation, said, funny expression, a newcomer to the forum, Tang Chuxia expression. He was a strong talker and was once obsessed with cultivation. As a result, he developed hysteria and shouted every day that today was the age of chaos. Later on, he was accidentally involved in a car accident and almost lost his life. Since then, he turned over a new leaf and resumed his old hobby. As he thought that Lu Cheng's performance was very similar to the cultivation in his fantasy, he became a fan. Listening to their replies, Yan Shaoling replied with an emoji of, I'm in a good mood with a sad face. Then I'll bet on the 10 yuan senior to win. Hey, shouldn't you bet on Lu Yongyuan to win? Lu Cheng will be happy if he wins and get money if he loses, said Okamoto's fan, in surprise. Yan Shaoling looked at them with disdain expression, I'm praying. Do you understand? Praying. Repeat after me, Qidao. I want to bet too, I want to bet too. I'll bet 20 yuan. Brahman jumped out. At this time, the drawing of lots continued. The battles between the strong fighters made the audience excited. They couldn't wait for the day after tomorrow to come. Kongtong School, Renli. An old Taoist with silver hair mixed with black hair read out a new name. Within a few seconds, he picked out Renli's opponent. Shizhou Island, Shang Yud. Lion King, Shang Yud. During the drawing of lots, they usually only read out the name of the fighter. However, when it came to fighters with titles, they had to add their titles as a sign of respect. It was the same for special titles like Living Buddha. As for fighters like Dragon King and Warrior Sage, who often had 2 or 3 titles at the same time, they would pick their favorite. Fighters who had won the title of King more than 3 times would always have a similar title. As for Qian Donglu, because he had held on to the title of Warrior Sage for a long time, he had mentioned that Warrior Sage was him for a few years. Gradually, it became his nickname. Lu Cheng, who was chatting with Yan Zhika about the god-slaying saber, heard the result and immediately entered the group chat. Looks like it's your treat this time. Although both of them had encountered titled masters and most likely wouldn't be able to progress any further and would be considered eliminated in the same round, Renli's match would come later, which fit the keyword of persisting longer. I think so too. Agreed Peng Liyun, who had been eliminated by Wisdom King. Hey, Taoist, you seem to be in a good mood. Lu Qing deliberately teased. Peng Liyun quickly replied, aren't you the same? A certain husky, who had drawn the god-slaying saber, was in high spirits. Fights like this were more about finding the problem, recognizing the gap, and gaining something was considered a success. At this moment, Renli popped up and said, don't be afraid. The god-slaying saber often loses. Although it's okay to cheer him on, why do I feel like Renli is trying to stir up trouble? In other words, don't be afraid, just do it. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched as he gave a dry laugh in response. With this interruption, he settled his thoughts and calmed down. He began to collect his emotions and asked Amen to get the video of the god-slaying saber's battle from the club. The afternoon of the day after tomorrow, at the arena on River Heart Island. The sun was high in the sky, the ground was burning, and the river was flowing east. The humidity was heavy. Lu Qing stood at the front of the cruise ship and looked at the leveled ground. At this moment, Yan Zhika sent a message. Smirking expression, she said, this is your first time fighting with a weapon, right? Lu Qing replied, snickering expression, if modern firearms don't count. I've fought with a gun before. You're so annoying. Don't worry about these details. Yan Zhika replied with a disdainful expression. After chatting for a while, Lu Qing looked up at the referee. He smiled, lowered his head, and said, "It's my turn." After replying, he locked the screen and passed the phone to Amen. With a light leap, he landed on the bow of the small boat. The waves parted as he moved forward slowly. Just as he reached River Heart Island, he saw a figure approaching from afar and gradually getting bigger. He stood between the water and the sky, as though he could absorb the light, making the area around him seem darker than it was at 2 in the afternoon. Step by step, the well-featured Lu Yong walked forward like an emissary of the eternal night. He held a long saber in his right hand. The dark green scabbard was quiet and restrained. But when Lu Qing saw it, he was shocked. He felt as though there was an evil dragon locked in it that was about to break free and bite him. P.S. This time it's a few minutes earlier, but it'll be at midnight. It should be back to normal by the day after tomorrow. Chapter 641. As Lu Yongyuan walked forward step by step, the entire Jiangxin Island gradually darkened. It wasn't until he stopped at the referee's designated spot that the feeling of darkness eased. Lu Yongyuan stood quietly at the same spot. His gaze fell on the hilt of the saber in his right hand. Following the mysterious curve, he looked at the tip of the saber and the soil it pointed at. When Lu Qing approached, he finally raised his head. His pure, blade-like eyes reflected his opponent's figure. It was just a simple glance, but Lu Qing felt as though a divine weapon was pointed at his forehead. The hair on his back stood on end. The surrounding environment was cut out from the world by the saber intent, shrinking into an isolated and sealed cage. Although he didn't draw his saber, it was better than drawing it. This was the first time Lu Qing had encountered such an aura battle. He couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, he lived up to his reputation. At this moment, he felt as though he had been exiled to a desolate desert, facing the boundless darkness alone. He couldn't escape and had nowhere to escape. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Qing formed the ice heart. Around him, a mass of red, a mass of gold, and a mass of light blue condensed, illuminating the darkness and resisting the saber force that was enveloping him. Lu Yongyuan didn't stop him. He looked at his 5 flames indifferently. At this moment, the referee finally confirmed the situation. He raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Conversation time starts now." Lu Yongyuan raised his head and looked away from Lu Qing. He looked at the clouds in the distance and said in a deep and magnetic voice, "My saber technique originated from the dark infinite scripture. After 6 years of hard work, I mastered it." When he said this, his expression didn't change at all. His deep and three-dimensional facial features and sparkling green eyes made him look like a demon. His neatly combed back hair was inexplicably dyed with the vicissitudes of life. What was he trying to say? Lu Qing knew very well that the Guanwei League used the dark infinite scripture, which was the secret art of the dark sect, as its foundation. They also mixed in a divine physical skill. Lu Yongyuan didn't wait for his opponent's reply. He stared at the horizon and continued, "In recent years, I have often felt the existence of shackles. The secret art of the predecessors is both a help and a cage. My saber technique originated from this, so it's time to break free from it." He retracted his gaze and looked into Lu Cheng's eyes again. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. "I've spent 5 whole years reviewing myself and my saber techniques. Finally, I've gained something. Previously, when I encountered powerful enemies, my instincts overcame my unfamiliarity. I never had the time to use it. The impulse to swing my saber is getting stronger and stronger. This battle came at the right time." Halfway through, Lu Qing roughly understood what his opponent was trying to say. Lu Yongyuan had mastered what he had learned in the first half of his life and created his own unique blade technique. However, due to the fact that he had encountered opponents of similar strength in the previous rounds, he had habitually used his original moves under great pressure. He hadn't found an opportunity to practice his new technique in actual combat. Now, he wanted to test the knife on himself. Without waiting for Lu Qing to speak, Lu Yongyuan switched the weapon to his left hand. His right hand gripped the hilt of the saber, which had been rubbed until it shone like a mirror. As long as you can block 9 of my attacks, I will consider this as my loss. As soon as he said that, the audience who were listening to the broadcast went into an uproar. Isn't this looking down on him? Nye Chi posted in astonishment. In her opinion, even if Lu Cheng was facing a titled Mighty One in perfect condition, as long as it wasn't the likes of Dragon King or Warrior Sage, even if Lu Cheng lost miserably in the end, he wouldn't be defeated in 9 moves. It wouldn't be a problem for him to withstand 20 to 30 moves. It would be normal for him to fight for 5 to 6 minutes. Exactly. Eternal Nightfall, Yan Shaoling and Brahman couldn't find any other words to say. They could only follow suit. This guy is too arrogant. Unparalleled Dragon King replied, comical expression. You guys fell for the provocation of God's slaying saber. That's true. Yan Shaoling replied, scratching head expression, then, will Lu Yongyuan admit defeat if senior can withstand 9 attacks? Definitely. Under the watchful eyes of so many people in broad daylight, every word is as good as a nail. Unless he doesn't want his old face anymore. Unparalleled Dragon King replied without hesitation. Which martial artist doesn't care about face? Puzzled expression, Yan Shaoling asked again, if senior doesn't take the provocation, won't he be digging his own grave? This shows that he's very confident in his self-created saber technique. Unparalleled Dragon King said firmly. See, you said it yourself. His confidence is inflated, and he looks down on others too much. He's too arrogant. Yan Shaoling changed the topic again. Unparalleled Dragon King was speechless. After a while, he replied, damn, your IQ is actually online today. This was the first time Lu Cheng encountered such a situation. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't angry. However, he quickly suppressed his agitated thoughts with icy heart, and began to suspect Lu Yongyuan's true intentions. Is he trying to provoke me? To make me lose my cool and choose to be rash? That's not right. He should know that I've mastered enemy heart-freezing move. Such psychological warfare wouldn't be effective. Is he serious? As thoughts ran through his mind, Lu Cheng's eyes became as deep as the starry sky. His tone was calm as he replied, then I'll look forward to seeing senior's saber technique. He didn't agree to the promise of 9 sabers, but he didn't deny it either. Lu Yongyuan nodded slightly and half-closed his eyes. He didn't speak anymore, as though he had turned into a stone statue. After a short while, the referee at the edge of River Heart Island gathered his Dantian Qi and shouted, begin. Clang! A long and distant sound suddenly came from Lu Yongyuan's scabbard. It was like the roar of a real dragon from the depths of the ocean, reverberating in Lu Cheng's ears and heart. The sound of the saber reached its peak as soon as it appeared. Lu Yongyuan flicked and released his left hand, and his right hand suddenly pulled out the famous, God-slaying saber. With a twist of his waist and a pull of his shoulder, the saber light cut across a distance of more than 30 meters and slashed towards Lu Cheng. It seemed to have absorbed all the light around it, making it brighter and purer. It made the 20-meter radius around Lu Cheng darker and darker. All sorts of hidden dangers were brewing in the darkness. Zzz. The golden, crimson, and faint purple colors around Lu Cheng were eroded by the darkness. They shrunk rapidly and were on the verge of going out of control. They were like snow under the scorching sun at noon. In his eyes, the line of heavenly light was dazzling and trembling continuously. Every tremor seemed to contain a change that corresponded to different dodging methods. At this moment, Lu Cheng didn't hesitate. He felt that retreating wasn't a good idea, and neither was defending. Once he used his body movement, he might be able to dodge the saber light, but he wouldn't be able to escape the terrifying darkness. Vice versa. This was a two-pronged attack with natural coordination. Thoughts flashed through his mind. With the reflection of his god, Lu Cheng no longer hesitated. Following his final judgment, he made a response. He gathered the half-melted crimson, faint blue, and faint purple fireballs into a star that didn't explode but emitted light and heat. The moment the darkness was illuminated, he suddenly raised his hands and slapped towards the saber light from both sides. The positions where his palms were facing each other were deep and cold. Bam! Zzz. The brilliance gathered on the god-slaying saber was about to explode, but it was swallowed up by the darkness and disappeared without a trace. Light against darkness, darkness against light. In that split second, Lu Qing grasped the characteristics of his cosmic flow and used all his strength. With the star on the outside and the darkness on the inside, he finally managed to block Lu Yongyuan's first strike. But before he could get a good look at the god-slaying saber or feel its metallic coldness, he heard the saber vibrating at high speed. He realized that there was nothing between his palms. The god-slaying saber had disappeared. It had disappeared mysteriously, as though it had never existed. At this moment, the surroundings were dark, and the saber seemed to have melted into it. Lu Qing felt a sense of danger. Exerting strength in his legs, he swung his waist and bounced more than 10 meters away. At the same time, he threw a punch with Emperor Yen and Ice Spirit in front of him. Blazing white flames with hints of purple intersected with the white frost of ice crystals. Bam! 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 Clang! After a few clangs, Lu Cheng's fists, which were covered in heavy purple flames, hit something solid. Sparks flew everywhere, and the saber that had disappeared reappeared in front of him. As he was unsteady on his feet while retreating, after blocking the god-slaying saber, Lu Cheng's body swayed and staggered. At this moment, Lu Yongyuan suddenly lowered his back and bounced out. He ran around his opponent at high speed, leaving behind 9 shadows in the blink of an eye. Each of his shadows held a saber and slashed forward ferociously. The saber light was deep and terrifying, turning into a torrential downpour that enveloped Lu Qing. Lu Qing felt that his enemy had finally stretched his body and revealed his true form. A black dragon with 9 heads spiraled downwards, opening its 9 mouths and tearing at him at the same time. It was violent and ferocious. The shadows were definitely remnants, but the saber light could be divided into 9 real shadows. Being attacked from all directions, Lu Qing couldn't find an opening to dodge. He could only form an ice wall to cover his body. Clang! 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 The saber light tore the crystal apart, causing it to disintegrate rapidly. Taking advantage of this short delay, Lu Qing visualized and gathered his force. Bam! 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 Just as the ice wall was completely broken, he had already exploded his Dan Qi. His fists were blazing white and slightly purple. His invasion was like fire, his attack was like fire. Clang! Clang! With the help of the deity above him, Lu Cheng's machine gun-like fists shattered most of the remaining saber light, shattering the darkness that enveloped him. Then, he took a few steps back to distance himself from Lu Yongyuan, preparing for the 4th saber strike. At this moment, Lu Qing looked fine on the surface, but the clothes on his back were torn, revealing a foot-long saber wound. His flesh was twisted, and the color was black. On the other side, Lu Yongyuan didn't take advantage of the situation to close in. Instead, he stood in place and said with a slight smile, "The 3 strikes just now were called Utmost Darkness, Daggerless, and 9-een. This is the 4th strike." He paused for a moment, then swung his saber again, accompanied by that deep and magnetic voice, "Square and circle." The 4th strike, square and circle. P.S. Looking for recommendations on Monday. Chapter 642. The god-slaying saber slashed down from above. It was plain and simple, but Lu Qing felt his surroundings suddenly dim, as though he was isolated from the world. Not only that, but they were also surging with undercurrents, piling up layer after layer of invisible shackles, making it difficult for him to break free. It was difficult for him to punch and kick, as if he could only watch as the long saber slashed down, resisting metal with his flesh. It was as if he had a big hammer, but he had a head. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. The saber entered Lu Cheng's eyes. Its shape was blurry and dim, as though it occupied the entire sky and ruled over everything. Other than that, there was nothing else. At that moment, Lu Cheng's soul was temporarily shaken. His body felt as though it was tied up by ropes, and he couldn't move. Facing the god-slaying saber, he didn't have time to think. Following the flash of thought and the martial arts accumulation and battle experience rooted in his root pulp, he retracted his qi and blood and gathered his dan at his lower abdomen. The dazzling stars moved slightly, immediately outlining the word, fighting, that was full of power. Boom! His dan qi erupted like a volcano. Lu Cheng's muscles expanded, and he grew taller and bigger. He broke the invisible shackles, and the sound of shattering could be heard from his surroundings. As the white gas scattered, he regained his mobility. He turned his back, raised his shoulders, swung his arms, and threw a punch into the air. Breaking order with violence. Boom! His fist hit the side of the saber, and the blurry darkness dissipated. The god-slaying saber bent like a bow, and it finally appeared clearly. It was a dark saber about the length of an arm. It was heavy and restrained, and between the reflections, there was a golden glow flowing, making the surroundings even darker. At that moment, Lu Yongyuan shook his wrist. The god-slaying saber bounced up and straightened with a clang. Following which, he slashed again and again from left and right, as though he was writing the character 4-8. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lu Yongyuan repeated the process, slashing the character 4-8 again and again. The more he slashed, the faster he got. The sound of the wind was intense, and there was a hint of blood in it. Lu Cheng felt as though he had encountered a heavy downpour. He took a deep breath and maintained his visualization, turning into a violent snowstorm. He slashed, collapsed, blasted, and whipped, using speed against speed and continuous attacks. Clang! Dang 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 dang! Crisp clashing sounds reverberated in all directions, like raindrops hitting banana leaves. Frost formed on both sides of the black god-slaying saber. It was getting heavier and heavier, more and more burdensome. On the other hand, Lu Chen gradually felt numb and powerless, as though he was slowly being corroded by a dark poison. He felt that there was no end to Lu Yongyuan's knife momentum. It would continue until it destroyed him. It was like the night sky in the evening. No matter how much the sun struggled, how much it burned the clouds, it would still be slowly but surely swallowed up, leaving no trace behind. Clang! Clang! Lu Cheng clenched his fists and swung his elbows, barely managing to block the long blade. He knew that he couldn't continue like this, or else he would be in a completely passive position. The outcome of the battle would be in the hands of others. He could only hope that Lu Yongyuan wouldn't be able to hold on for long. All of a sudden, he curled up his body and squatted down. With his strength, qi, blood, and mind, the god-slaying saber struck nothing but air. Boom! Before the long blade struck, he exploded his dan force and exerted force in his legs. Instead of retreating, he pounced towards Lu Yongyuan, holding a ball of light purple flames in each hand. If he dodged or retreated, the knife momentum would come continuously, and he wouldn't be able to shake it off. The best way to deal with this move was to attack. Pouncing close to the ground, Lu Cheng clasped his hands in front of him, wanting to collide with the two balls of purple flames and shoot out a prairie fire. But just as Lu Cheng leaped, Lu Yongyuan took a step back with perfect precision, reducing the distance between them by a centimeter. It was as though he was dancing with his opponent. With a flick of his wrist, the long blade came down swiftly towards Lu Cheng. It left a streak of light in its wake, like a bolt of lightning that cut through the darkness. The darker the surroundings, the more powerful it was. At the same time, an explosion sounded in the air, like a thunderbolt on a sunny day. Lu Cheng's scalp went numb. Without thinking, he pulled his shoulders and forcefully shook his arms upwards, letting the purple flames collide with the blade. Boom! Purple flames gushed out, wrapping around the long blade. It was so viscous that it looked like lava. Taking advantage of the momentary pause of the god-slaying blade, Lu Qing leaped backwards, his face almost touching the ground, as though he was skiing. Poof! The long blade broke through the purple flames, brushed past Lu Cheng's leg, and fell into the air. Lu Yongyuan's face was expressionless. Following this trend, he squatted down, letting the long blade, which was emitting dense darkness, stab into the ground. Bam! Bam! Yenjika covered her mouth, while Brahman and the others screamed. In their eyes, Lu Qing had fallen into an extremely dangerous situation, and in his current state, it would be difficult for him to respond well. At this critical moment, Lu Qing retracted his limbs and curled up his body, avoiding most of the bam. In his mind, he quickly outlined the deep and cold darkness and the heavy sun that had crashed into this area. Mutated version of severe warning. To him, performing a simplified physical invulnerability move was already very fast. Bam! Lu Qing shook his shoulders, swung his arm, and punched down with his right fist. The surface was covered in darkness, heavy and restrained, as though it could absorb everything in the world. Whoosh! 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 7 or 8 bam of bam were affected, slightly changing their trajectories, and struck Lu Cheng's fist, dissolving into the darkness. Immediately after, the darkness exploded, the force spurting out and hitting the ground. Lu Qing took advantage of this to bounce up and change his direction in midair. Just as he stepped on the ground, he stirred up a strong wind and changed his position, avoiding further attacks. During this process, his right fist was covered in cuts, and darkness invaded. Much of his strength was absorbed, and he could only droop weakly. Lu Yongyuan paused again, nodded with satisfaction, and said, "The 3 strikes just now are called Dusk, Heaven Spear, and Raging Waves. Next is the 8th strike. Extreme Electricity." Before Lu Yongyuan finished his sentence, he had already bent down. His long blade turned back as though it was returning to its sheath, and then it bounced back out. It was at this moment that Lu Qing sensed an extreme sense of danger. Without giving it much thought, he straightened his back, took a step to the side, and turned his body sideways. All of a sudden, a flash of light appeared in front of Lu Qing. The long blade was already at the spot he had been standing at. It was unimaginably fast. Behind the gleam of the blade were the waves of air that had been split apart. They revealed their form and clustered around extreme electricity. Boom! Only when everything was clear did the strong sonic boom enter Lu Cheng's ears. Rolling waves of air were sent flying in all directions. It was similar to the flying dragon takedown of the Xinzhai sect. They were both at the pinnacle of blade speed. Clang! The god-slaying saber seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure. It trembled and made a noise, but at the same time, it seemed to be enjoying itself. It couldn't help but let out a loud cry. Lu Yongyuan's expression darkened slightly. A glint flashed in his eyes, and he retracted his long blade and held it horizontally across his lower abdomen. Suddenly, a sharp glint spurted out, and the surroundings turned pitch black. The sun at 2 or 3 in the afternoon was swallowed by the heavenly hound. In the endless darkness, Lu Qing couldn't see or hear anything. Even his spirit seemed to have lost its support. It was empty and there was no feedback. This caused him to feel a chill in his heart. He felt as if he was about to be devoured by the heavenly hound. Channeling his qi and blood, Lu Qing was not stingy with his flame force. There was no technique involved in the flame force. It was just a lot of it, and it was just fast. Blazing white light gathered and blasted out, quickly falling into the darkness and disappearing before Lu Cheng's eyes. However, after that, there was no burst of fire, no sound of explosion. Everything around him was silent, as if it was dead. The darkness surged in uncontrollably. Lu Qing actually felt like admitting defeat. However, his willpower was strong, and his ice heart was unaffected. All kinds of thoughts still flashed through his mind. The 9 words formula was used simultaneously. Internally, it was used to increase one's mental strength. Externally, it would allow one to face the enemy without fear, weaken the enemy, and strengthen oneself. Within a certain range, one would be able to see through illusions caused by mental suppression. Lu Qing suspected that most of the effects of this slash were illusions, an experience after one's mind was blinded. Once the 9 words formula appeared, his vision suddenly became clear. The dim glow of the saber had already reached him, but it didn't cover up the surrounding colors and flames from the flame force explosion. Raising one hand to protect his face, he clenched his other hand into a fist and punched out. Lu Qing found the god-slaying saber hidden in the dim glow. Clang! The long saber trembled and slanted to the side. Lu Qing's body was covered in wounds. All of them were pitch-black wounds that curled up his skin and flesh. His mind went blank for a moment, as if he had been poisoned. He quickly gathered his qi and blood, alleviating most of the effects. Taking advantage of the situation, he punched forward, switching from defense to offense. Lu Yongyuan floated backwards, his long saber drawing a line in front of him, separating the two. Then he said in a deep voice, "I've lost." 9 slashes had passed. Lu Qing stopped in his tracks. He couldn't believe it. In order to respond, he had used all his strength and racked his brains. He didn't even count how many slashes there were. Lu Yongyuan looked straight into his eyes and said, 9 slashes have passed. I've lost. The last slash is called eternal silence. After that, he shook his head, turned around, and left. Half in thought, half in despair, he muttered, "Too slow, too slow." Chapter 643. Looking at Lu Yongyuan's straight but bleak back as he left, Lu Qing didn't feel much joy from winning the match. Even when the referee announced his victory, it didn't cause any ripples in his heart. If he had finally defeated this titled mighty one after a tough battle, even if he wasn't paying attention and didn't perform well, he would definitely be overjoyed and excited. However, after 9 such strikes, Lu Yongyuan, who still had a lot of fighting power left, admitted defeat and left. It made him feel suffocated and didn't feel like he was the winner. Does this count as running away after showing off? How exciting! Lu Qing complained to himself as the thought flashed through his mind. Recalling what had just happened, Lu Yongyuan had indeed shown him what a top-notch physical invulnerability expert was. It could even be said that he was the world's top-notch saber technique. If he hadn't paused twice in between to describe the moves, he might not have been able to withstand more than 9 strikes. This is the difference between me and a true top-notch expert. Lu Qing came to this realization as he recalled the battle from before. He vaguely felt that he had made some progress under the pressure of Lu Yongyuan's 9 strokes bladesmanship. He seemed to be able to grasp the techniques of physical invulnerability moves at his fingertips and was no longer restricted by the rules of the past. Thinking back to the past 10 days of sparring with Xian Xiaoya, Wang Kei, and Living Buddha, Lu Qing suddenly felt that he hadn't come here in vain. He had seen and learned a lot. Wasn't this the reason why he joined the master battle in the first place? All of a sudden, Lu Qing's emotions were cleared and he was in a good mood. His footsteps were steady but fast as he walked to the riverside. He couldn't wait to share his joy with his little fairy. "Ha ha ha ha, you've been boasting. I thought you couldn't block his 9 strikes." Setting off firecrackers expression, Brahman said. Looking at his boastful look, "I've been nervous for a long time." Eternal nightfall, Yan Shaoling added. Following which, she had a question. Didn't he say 9 strikes? He must have slashed at least a dozen times. Chop. In your mouth, a grandmaster of the way of the saber is like a hooligan on the streets. Facepalm expression, unparalleled Dragon King explained, covering face expression. In a martial arts competition, 9 sabers means 9 moves. Oh. So that's how it is. I knew that he's a titled expert, so he can't be so shameless. Yan Shaoling suddenly realized. She had been holding back this question for a long time. Nye Chi asked curiously, why did the god-slaying saber make a promise of 9 moves? I saw that he was in pretty good condition at the end. There shouldn't be any problems if we continue to fight. Road to the arena drifted over and explained, I'm not sure. Martial artists who use the saber like to leave no room for retreat. They like to cut off all means of retreat. They don't give themselves the slightest chance of hesitation or wavering. With this, they push their will to the extreme and make their state exceed normal. Just now, the god-slaying saber was like that. It compressed all hope into 9 moves and gave off the most dazzling light. Really? Yan Shaoling was stunned. She felt like her horizons had been broadened. Of course. Road to the arena replied with a smirk. Of course it's fake. I just made it up. How can martial artists like us understand the thoughts of physical invulnerability experts? At this moment, there was a heated discussion on Weibo. They felt that Lu Yongyuan's choice was incomprehensible. There's no problem with the promise of 9 moves. This is the attitude of a senior mighty warrior towards a rising star. However, during the battle, Lu Yongyuan paused twice to give Lu Qing a chance to regroup. He didn't have to continue dodging and making others feel like he didn't want to win. The well-known difference of 1 move, expressed his doubts. Poison Milk Hierarch, He Xiaowei reposted. Maybe there's a big problem with Lu Yongyuan's new move and he needs to take a break. Or maybe Lu Yongyuan was too confident and wanted to give the full 9 moves a chance, but he made a mistake. There are too many reasons like this. We don't have to care about them. Let's happily discuss how Lu Qing entered the top 16 as a third-pin martial artist. This isn't something that happens often. When this was said, there were many comments. They all had the same feeling. A physical invulnerability expert defeated a titled Mighty One in his first few matches. No one else can do that. Yeah. Although there are various reasons, it's still a shocking thing. Oh right, is there a lip reader? I couldn't hear what Lu Yongyuan said at the end. He said it was too slow, too slow. What he meant was that the 9th move gave Lu Qing too much time to react. Even if he made a mistake, he still had a chance to make up for it. I admire people with special skills like the one above. Lu Yongyuan hasn't named his self-created move, right? Let me think of one. It's from the Dark Sect, but it's also different from the Dark Sect. Why don't we call it the non-Dark Sect? Lu Family Saber. It's simple and clear. Amidst the various opinions, Lu Qing ended his chat with Yan Zhika. He had a good night's sleep and completely eliminated the dark poison in his body. At 7:30 p.m., he watched the remaining 8 elimination matches in the hotel. He was excited about the few matches between the strong. In the third last match, Renli went up the stage and challenged Lion King Shang Yud. Her opponent was a monster with tenacious vitality and astonishing recovery speed. Apart from attacking his vitals, it was almost impossible to break through his defense. Renli's sword could cut through mummies and dark night bats, but the most she could do was leave a shallow wound on the Lion King's body. Such a wound would heal in a few seconds or a dozen seconds. After trying Hidden Scent and other moves, but to no avail, Renli could only rely on the wind sex movements to move around and fight. However, after a long battle, it was inevitable that she would slip up. She was immediately caught by Lion King and defeated in a round of counterattacks. You can think of what to treat us to now. After the match, Peng Liyun immediately tagged Lu Qing in the group chat. Lu Qing replied, I feel like this meal should be treated by God-slaying saber. If you can get him to treat us, we don't mind. Peng Liyun replied emotionlessly. I think he'll kill me. Wiping cold sweat expression. And Chaoyang laughed and said, is it too late for me to book a ticket now? No problem. The top 16 match is the night after tomorrow. Renli suddenly replied. Didn't you just finish your match? Peng Liyun was a little stunned. Renli replied matter-of-factly, I just returned to the changing room and wanted to urge Lu Qing. Chihuahuas are always full of energy. Lu Qing laughed and shook his head. After half an hour, the remaining 2 matches ended. Lu Qing realized that other than himself, the rest of the top 16 contestants were all famous mighty ones. Warrior Sage, Qian Donglu, Kiran Dongbaxian, Wisdom King, Zhi Hai, Taoist Sword, Wu Qiao, Spear King, Huang Ku, Clown, Gu Jianxi, Queen of Thought, Fei Dan, Optimus Prime, Long Zhen, Blazing Sword, Qi Ling. If they weren't titled mighty ones, they were strong reserves for the title. Looking at these, Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He sent a message to Yanjika. I feel like a sheep in a pack of wolves. All around me are big shots. Yanjika was taking a break between classes when she saw a notification. Because of the word husky, she clicked on it with interest. The main theme of the news was that a husky had sneaked into a pack of wolves in a zoo and was hiding there. He looked so dumb that he couldn't keep up his act. As she was browsing, she saw a message from Cheng. She switched the interface and saw the content. A sheep in a pack of wolves. It's obviously. Pfft. Thinking of the previous news, Yanjika couldn't help but laugh. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Her body trembled for a long time as if someone had poked her laughing nerve. After a while, she recovered and replied with a cute expression, yes, yes, yes. Brother Cheng, you're right. Your answer feels weird. Frowning expression, puzzled expression, replied Lu Cheng. No, I'm not. Replied Yanjika with her dimples. What did you think of? Lu Cheng didn't believe her. He guessed very well. Yanjika sent an emoji of rolling its eyes with a hint of complacency. Have you heard the song of Little Dragon Man? My answer is in it, the answer is in the song. Confused and curious, Lu Cheng searched the song and browsed through the lyrics. He saw a dozen words, I'm not telling you, I'm not telling you, I'm not telling you. Lu Cheng was dumbfounded with his mouth half open. After a while, he burst out laughing. He couldn't wait to pull Yanjika into his arms. However, there was a TV, a coffee table, and a small fridge in front of him, but there was no beautiful figure. He stared blankly and was silent for more than 10 seconds. Then he smiled again and expressed his admiration for his wife's wit in a light tone. The top 16 of the Master Battle drew lots to determine the later matches. The winners and their counterparts would enter the top 8 and the semifinals. During the process of drawing lots, the conversations between the masters attracted a lot of attention. When Lu Cheng got the second place in the bottom half, he heard his name. His opponent was Wuyue Club, Gu Jianxi. The clown, Gu Jianxi. P.S. Why didn't you vote for it? Chapter 644. At the side entrance of Jiuqiu City's 50,000-seat stadium, Gu Jianxi, who had just participated in the elimination round of the top 32 and watched the lot drawing ceremony, walked out with his hands in his pockets. He turned into the alley behind him. He had a hairstyle commonly seen in war-torn zones, with a head full of small braids. There was a tattoo of a clown with black and green stripes on his neck and cheek. The lower down, the more exposed his skin was, the more tattoos there were. They were densely packed and stacked on top of each other, sending chills down one's spine. There was an unreliable rumor in the pugilistic world that Gu Jianxi would get a tattoo as a souvenir every time he experienced a major event. For example, the clown tattoo represented the first time he killed someone. At this moment, Gu Jianxi was wearing a black and colorful hip-hop style t-shirt. He didn't look like a renowned physical invulnerability mighty one, but more like a rapper. Just as he was about to turn the corner, a male reporter who had been waiting for him for a long time leaped over, raised his microphone, and asked, Mr. Gu, what are your thoughts on the battle between you and Lu Cheng for the top 16? It was forbidden to interview martial artists before the start of the competition to avoid disturbing the mood of the contestants. Therefore, he had to seize this fleeting opportunity. Before he could finish his sentence, the reporter with 2 pimples on his forehead saw Gu Jianxi looking at him coldly. That gaze was like that of a wild wolf choosing its prey, and it made him shudder. I was just asking. It's fine if you don't want to answer. The reporter opened his mouth to explain, but he couldn't even stutter. His voice was stuck in his throat. As expected of the clown, who had taken more than 100 lives. He sighed to himself with fear and trepidation. And this was under the premise that the clown rarely left the country after the ranking ceremony. Gu Jianqi retracted his gaze and spat out 3 words coldly. No opinion. No opinion. The reporter's mind went blank as he stood there stiffly. He only recovered when the clown took a few steps forward. He keenly picked up on the emotions hidden in Gu Jianqi's words. He was angry because of the question, so he had no opinion. Why was he angry? Was it because the question had insulted him? In a flash of inspiration, the reporter caught up with him. He panted slightly and said, Mr. Gu, do you think there's no need to discuss this match? Do you think there's only one outcome? That you're sure of winning? Gu Jianqi turned his head to look at him expressionlessly. He answered in a flat tone, you're right. Yes. When the simple word, yes, entered the reporter's ears, it was as if he had heard the sound of nature. He felt that he had gotten the big news of the day. As expected of the clown, who was known for being straightforward. He was not hypocritical, he was not tactful, he was not afraid, he was not perfunctory. If there was something he wanted to say, he would always say it directly. Taking a deep breath, the reporter's thoughts raced. He hurriedly added another question, an even sharper one. Do you think that Lu Cheng is an exception in the top 16, a product of luck and not enough to compete with you? Just as he finished asking, he suddenly realized that Gu Jianqi's gaze had darkened. His gaze had become like an X-ray, as if he could see every dirty thought in his heart clearly. Gu Jianqi stared at him for 10 seconds. His stare made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. It was as if he had been continuously slashed by someone with a sword. It was as if he had arrived at the terrifying edge of death. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans slid down his forehead. Just when the reporter felt that he could not take it anymore and was about to break down, Gu Jianqi turned his head and entered the alley, leaving behind an indifferent answer. For now, yes. When his silhouette disappeared, the reporter relaxed. He bent over, his hands on his knees, and retched for a while. For now, yes. For now, yes. He stood up straight again and chewed on those 3 words. Gradually, an excited smile appeared on his face. 10 minutes later, a lot of shocking headlines appeared on the internet, breaking news. The clown sees Lu Cheng as nothing. I'm definitely going to win. So declared Gu Jianqi. The clown says Lu Cheng doesn't deserve to be in the top 16 of the master battle. This is going to be interesting. There's an uproar everywhere. Xin Xiaoya, who had just entered the hotel lobby, clicked her tongue as she looked at her phone. Just then, from the corner of her eye, she saw a gloomy Gu Jianqi appear at the main entrance. Have you seen it? Xin Xiaoya waved her phone. Gu Jianqi nodded without any expression, indicating that he already knew about the headlines and the argument between the fans of the 2 groups. Sigh, it's not like you don't know. These reporters, if you give them 1 point, they'll give you 5 points, said Xin Xiaoya casually. If it were me, I'd give them 10 points. She didn't expect Gu Jianqi to answer her, but after a few seconds of silence, he actually gave her a concise explanation. There were really only 2 sentences. I'm telling the truth. Angry prey is easier to deal with. After that, Gu Jianqi shut his mouth and walked to the elevator with his usual gloomy expression, leaving the flattered Xin Xiaoya standing there in a daze. Lu Cheng sat cross-legged on the bed, comforting his wife while watching Yan Shaoling and the others discuss among themselves. It made him look like an outsider. He knew very well that there was nothing wrong with what Lu Cheng said. With his newly consolidated strength, he could win against Crazy Blade on a whim, but it was almost impossible for him to defeat Lu Cheng. Among the top 16 martial artists, he was indeed much weaker than the others. Even he himself had complained that he was like a sheep in a pack of wolves. So there was nothing to be angry about. Of course, not being angry didn't mean he wasn't depressed. Knowing clearly that didn't mean he could accept it rationally, Lu Qing couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He just wanted time to pass quickly. Give me 2 more years, no, 1 more year. Even if I don't get a title, I'll be qualified to stand here. When that time comes, I'll defeat you fair and square. As his thoughts ran wild, he focused more of his energy on watching the clown's battle videos and watching the Death Sect unique skill that was infused with a little bit of freezing. With such seriousness and focus, the top 16 elimination round arrived quickly. At 7:30 p.m. in early November, it was already chilly. Crowds of spectators rushed to the stadium against the chilly autumn wind, filling up the Jiuqiu city's 50,000-seat stadium, leaving only the passageway between the battleground and the empty seats to prevent stampedes. After hearing Little Fairy's cheers, Lu Qing calmed down. He stood up without feeling angry, happy, expectant, or self-deprecating, and walked out of the changing room. He didn't think about what would happen if he won or lost the match. He was only thinking about how to do his best and grab hold of that sliver of opportunity to win. Walking through the long passageway and stepping onto the field that no longer had green grass, Lu Qing, wearing a white martial arts suit with dragon and tiger patterns, saw Gu Jianxi, who was already standing opposite him. The clown was dressed in black. Even his eyes were like the night without stars and moon. His aura was cold and dangerous, as though he would kill at the slightest provocation. The clown's avatar, which was green with a tinge of black, came into Lu Cheng's view. Bits and pieces of information about him flashed across Lu Cheng's mind. Born in a war-torn zone and grew up in the midst of killing, shockingly talented. Without any powerful martial arts, he could always kill his opponents, discovered by the Dinghai sect elder and brought into the sect. He avoided the fate of always getting his shoes wet. Just at the first pin, he was already at the inhuman stage. A few years later, he made the great leap and was already at the first pin. He didn't like to socialize and didn't do hypocritical things, even if he offended many people. The unique skills of the Death Sect complemented his talents. He was a killer martial artist and showed no mercy when he attacked. He was also the type to perform better in bigger situations. However, when facing opponents weaker than him, he wouldn't be careless and would be equally vicious and deadly. As his thoughts surfaced, Lu Qing saw the referee announcing the start of the match. Gu Jianxi didn't say anything. He just stared at Lu Qing like a poisonous snake staring at a frog. At first, Lu Qing didn't think much of it. However, after being stared at for 10 seconds, he gradually felt the urge to escape and avoid facing it. Gradually, he felt uneasy. He quickly formed his ice heart to alleviate the invisible pressure and strong premonition of danger. A dark starry sky appeared, darker than the night sky. Bright stars moved slowly, heavy and scorching. Lu Qing tried to use his aura to shake the clown. However, Gu Jianxi remained unmoved, as though he had lost all senses. He continued to stare at Lu Qing, causing ripples in his ice heart. Is this a staring game where whoever blinks first loses? Lu Qing suddenly had a similar thought. He almost burst out laughing. His ice heart regained its calmness and clarity. He didn't take the opportunity to form his 5 flames. This was because today's fighting style would be different from before. At this moment, the referee's voice reverberated throughout the arena. Begin. With a bang, Lu Qing spun on his heel and twisted his waist. Suddenly, a snowstorm enveloped the surroundings. In the white gale, he moved quickly, constantly changing his position, as though he was fighting on the move. However, Gu Jianxi didn't move. He squinted his eyes and stood at his original spot. Seeing this, Lu Qing pressed his thumb, and a crystal-cold light shot out with a whoosh. Then, he moved his feet and changed to another place. He punched fiercely, and a purple meteor-like flame burst out. Bam! Boom! Ice Spirit Holy Light and Lord Emperor's Purple Flame. The clown, Gu Jianxi, didn't try to dodge. He only took 2 steps and dodged in the most economical way possible. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. Lu Qing kept moving in the snowstorm, attacking from afar. The cold light and purple flame danced together. Gu Jianxi, on the other hand, maintained his previous style, moving his body precisely and economically. This allowed Lu Qing to predict his next move. Subconsciously, he paused for 2 seconds to slash at the clown, forcing him to take the initiative to crash into the ice spirit holy light. At this moment, Gu Jianxi suddenly moved. He didn't dodge as Lu Qing had expected. Instead, he bent his back and pounced on his opponent, pouncing on his opponent who had slowed down. A black shadow blurred due to its high speed and quickly approached Lu Qing. Lu Qing had no time to dodge. He dodged, clenched his fist and smashed it diagonally, half blocking and half moving. Bam! Beneath him, the mud and stones suddenly exploded. A hand clenched into a fist and rushed out from the cracked ground, aiming for Lu Qing's vital points. The blurry black shadow instantly turned illusory, distorted, and disappeared. Chapter 645. Throughout the entire process, the split shadows created a strong murderous aura to attract Lu Qing's senses. Gu Jianxi, who had sneaked into the ground at some point in time, concealed his aura, spirit, and other senses, as though he had turned into a real rock. Only at the moment of the surprise attack did he erupt with an earth-shattering explosion. He had put in so much effort just to hide from Lu Qing's ability to foresee danger. However, Gu Jianxi had underestimated the uniqueness of cultivation. Other than being countered by Gu Hui's Dharma access from cultivation once, Lu Qing had never failed. After his third awakening and making the Great Leap, he even had a hint of the cicada senses before the autumn wind, from the realm of martial arts, the realm of the mighty prowess. The clown's concealment of his aura was excellent. Coupled with the external, soul of the dead, technique to confuse others, it was indeed perfect. However, the unusual slight vibrations on the ground still alerted Lu Qing. As he clenched his fist and smashed diagonally, he took the opportunity to take a step forward, narrowly avoiding his vital organs. Amidst the splattering of mud and stones, he spread his arms, lifted his right knee, swung his calf, and used the tip of his foot to kick Gu Jianxi's fist that was flying towards the sky. This seemingly ordinary rock spreads its wings, had the power of internal explosion hidden within it. Lu Qing knew that the clown had incorporated a little of the ice sex techniques and had extremely strong resistance to cold. In a split second, he naturally leaned towards using the fire sex techniques. For mighty ones who had made the Great Leap, their mental strength was strong, and visualization was easy and fast. They could easily execute simplified physical invulnerability moves. Poof! Lu Qing's tip of his foot pecked the side of Gu Jianxi's fist and immediately channeled the hidden Emperor Yen force. At this moment, a dark green glow erupted from the clown's fist and turned into dancing butterflies. Every butterfly took away part of the flame force and started burning on its own. It was green and cold, like the soul-stirring phosphorescence in a mass grave. Seeing that the internal explosion was neutralized, Lu Qing immediately retracted his leg and wanted to step out with his left foot to strike the Lord Emperor's purple flame into the ground to awaken the volcano. Just as he was about to retract his right leg, Gu Jianxi suddenly lost most of his weight, turning into a sticky plaster or a ghost that haunted the human body. He stuck his fist to the tip of Lu Qing's foot, as though he wanted to be lifted by Lu Qing. Not only would he avoid the subsequent attacks directed at the ground, but he could also assassinate Lu Qing at close range. Seeing this, Lu Qing instantly changed his strategy. While he was retracting his right leg, his body was already in the air, and his left leg kicked out continuously. In that instant, Gu Jianxi suddenly retracted his exposed arm. Blurry shadows that resembled evil spirits surged out from the cracks in the ground and crashed into Lu Qing one after another. Rumble. The Emperor Yen force gathered in Lu Qing's left leg exploded. Crimson, white, and purple flames rolled out and swept across, melting many of the ghosts. However, there was an endless stream of evil spirits. Lu Qing, who was struggling to move in midair, looked like he was about to lose his defensive line and become a live target. His expression didn't change. His outstretched hands hung down naturally, forming a seal in front of him. He exhaled and said, "Formation." His deep voice reverberated. The air around the cracks instantly froze, turning into an invisible cage. The evil spirits were sealed underground, unable to break free for a while. Bam! Beside Lu Cheng, mud and rocks splattered. A black shadow soared into the sky. It was none other than the clown, Gu Jianxi. His eyes were dark green. He didn't clench his right hand to punch, slap, or chop. Instead, he used his middle finger as the tip of a sword and stabbed at Lu Cheng's ribs. His fingernails glowed green, and his skin was grayish-white. At this moment, Lu Cheng's feet had yet to touch the ground, and his hands had just formed a seal. His momentum was exhausted. He couldn't dodge or block. Gu Jianxi didn't place all his hopes on blinding Lu Cheng's sense of danger. He used the techniques of Undead Will Not Die and 100 Ghosts Parade to create this perfect opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. The third move of the Death Sect, Yama's Invitation. Lu Cheng was very clear that when facing the physical invulnerability moves of the Death Sect, it was best not to have the thought of exchanging injuries for victory. Once he failed to block the move, he would be hit by the unguarded body. Even if it wasn't a vital point, it would still affect his vital points. Under normal circumstances, even if his arms or legs were broken, with the physical invulnerability Mighty One's control over his body, even if they couldn't regrow them, as long as they pressed the missing part back to its original position in time, they would still be able to heal without any repercussions. As for minor injuries, like a hole in the stomach or a collapsed shoulder, they would be treated as normal. However, when facing a martial artist who practiced the unique skills of the Death Sect, such minor injuries could still be fatal. At this critical juncture, Lu Cheng's hands, which were forming the seal, changed naturally. The seal script in his mind reappeared. He aimed at Gu Jianxi and spoke in a dignified but deep voice, "Army." This was the complete army formula. It was 2 to 3 times stronger than the simplified version that only relied on the stimulation of qi and blood. The murderous aura surged into the sky as thousands of sharp points converged. The cold and merciless arrows shot towards Gu Jianxi's body, making him feel as though he was in a desperate situation and was ambushed from all sides. As a martial artist who had walked out from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, the clown's attack only paused for a moment before he got rid of the influence. Such a scene wasn't only seen in illusions, he had also experienced it in reality. However, Lu Cheng seized the opportunity and detonated a small amount of Emperor Yen force. His body was like a rocket that was launched twice. He moved horizontally by 1 foot in the air and landed on the ground. Without giving Gu Jianxi any time to adjust his attack, he changed the seal with his hands again. He exhaled deeply and said, "All right." He landed mysteriously and connected heaven and earth. With a tap of his heel, Lu Cheng flew backwards at a speed so fast that his afterimages could be seen. He didn't take the opportunity to counterattack. Instead, he took the opportunity to widen the distance between them. This was because the Death Sect martial artists had to pay a certain price for their terrifying attacks. They were weaker in endurance battles. Seeing Lu Cheng closing in and quickly shrinking, Gu Jianxi's eyes remained cold. He raised his left hand, bent his fingers, and knocked heavily towards the void in front of him with his joints as though he was knocking on a door. Dong! Lu Cheng, who was retreating rapidly, felt his ice heart being hit by an invisible hammer. It shattered into pieces and surged violently. A strong sense of fear emerged. His body trembled slightly and stiffened. The first move of the Death Sect, Midnight Ghost knocks on the door. This move was executed smoothly by Gu Jianxi and didn't require much preparation. Furthermore, he had referenced the unique skills of the Ice Sect and made targeted improvements to counter the enemy heart-freezing move. Fear was like a tidal wave, crazily slapping at Lu Cheng's will. However, he had been through a lot and managed to hold on. Once again, he formed a forward. Without complimenting his voice, Lu Cheng merely changed his hand seals. With a momentum of no return, Lu Cheng suppressed the fear in his heart and formed the Ice Heart once again. At this moment, Gu Jianxi had already closed in like a ghost. With a shake of his right arm, his arm swelled and his fist swung sideways. Lu Cheng had just raised his arm to block when he suddenly sensed danger. A layer of ice formed on his right leg and he retracted it out of reflex. It wasn't until this moment that he realized that the clown was kicking from above. However, that kick was soundless and undetectable to his senses. The seventh move of the Death Sect, Shadowless Killing Kick. Bam! Before Gu Jianqi's fist landed on Lu Cheng's raised forearm, his left leg had already landed on Lu Cheng's whip leg. The thick layer of ice shattered instantly, turning into grayish-white powder that dissipated into the air. It took a few seconds for it to melt. Bam! The clown's fist was blocked and stopped. However, Lu Cheng felt a chill invade his body. It ignored the normal flame force and made his arms feel as though they were temporarily dead. This was a double trap. Gu Jianqi had prepared it specifically for Lu Cheng, who had a premonition of danger. He had weakened the power of the Shadowless Killing Kick and enhanced his Yama force with the Undying Soul technique. Originally, the upper part was illusory while the lower part was solid. Now, the lower part was 70% and the upper part was 30%. Lu Cheng didn't panic when he lost feeling in his two arms. Instead, he twisted his waist and swung his right arm out. It was a single whip. At the same time, he took a step forward with both hands and feet. With a heavy step, he created a field of blazing faint purple flames. They turned into a wall of flames and pushed towards Gu Jianqi. It was the Fire Sect's Burning Mountain and Evaporating Lake technique. At this moment, Gu Jianqi revealed a stiff smile. Instead of retreating, he advanced. He didn't put up any more defenses and just turned his body to avoid the single whip. Bam! The purple wall of flames slammed into his legs and ignited them. However, Gu Jianqi seemed to have turned into a corpse. He had lost his sense of pain and didn't show any signs of stopping. His left hand shot out like a cobra and jabbed towards Lu Cheng, who had already used up all his moves. He didn't slow down at all and seemed to have infused all his strength into it. At such a close distance, such an attack arrived in an instant. Lu Cheng only had time to pull his body back and avoid the attack on his neck. Pfft! Gu Jianqi's left index finger was pressed against Lu Cheng's shoulder. Extreme danger was contained within. The ninth move of the Death Sect, Killer Strike, Final Smile. Lu Cheng's mind raced. He looked at the clown's completely charred legs and the hair between his legs that was covered in red flames. He couldn't help but feel a twinge in his balls. I thought I was good at exchanging injuries for victory and was an expert in life and death battles. However, there's always someone better out there. There's always someone more ruthless. If this move of mine was a little more powerful. He gasped and stopped resisting. He understood that Gu Jianqi was taking the risk by relying on the uniqueness of the body of the dead and the strong self-healing ability of a physical invulnerability martial artist. Of course, if it was a life and death battle, with his ruthlessness, he would have done the same even if he didn't have these and the risk was extremely high. This was the clown, Gu Jianqi. The corner of the referee's mouth twitched. He quickly raised his right hand and shouted, "Gu Jianqi wins." Bits of flames fell and the dark green covered the charred black, like fashionable trousers. Chapter 646. Hearing the referee's announcement, Lu Cheng calmed his emotions and bowed. He turned and walked towards the entrance of the changing room at the edge of the stadium. He seemed to hear the sighs from across the mountains and rivers. Cuckoo, Yan Shaoling and Brahman must be very disappointed, even more so than me. Entering the aisle, Lu Cheng took his phone from Amen. Just as he turned on the light, he saw Yan Zhika's message. The girl said, "The clown is really giving it his all. Yeah, I didn't expect this. He's treating the arena battle like a life and death battle." Lu Cheng sighed. He knew Gu Jianqi's fighting style very well, but he didn't expect him to be so aggressive after just a few rounds. He was ruthless to his opponent and even more ruthless to himself. Martial artists who practiced the unique skills of the Death Sect did have the weakness of not being able to last long. But the problem was that they had only fought for a short while. The clown was still far from his limit. He didn't have to risk his life like this. This was more of a life and death battle than a life and death battle. As for the safety of both parties, the referee wandering around the edge was only the host and witness. He wasn't in charge of such matters. It was all up to the judgment of the physical invulnerability mighty ones. In popular words, as a physical invulnerability mighty one, don't you know if you can block the opponent's attack and what kind of damage you will suffer? As for accidents caused by not being able to hold back, it was very rare for a physical invulnerability mighty ones. Even if it did happen, there was a high probability that the opponent would only be seriously injured and not killed. If someone deliberately made a mistake, there would be video evidence. Once confirmed, they would be the enemy of the entire world. Yenjika followed with a sighing emoji. The clown's fans are resenting you. Resenting me for what? I didn't deliberately burn him down there. He was the one who ran into me. Lu Qing replied, annoyed and amused at the same time. Yenjika laughed until tears came out. They resent you for not holding on long enough. If you had held on for a few more rounds, the clown would definitely have exposed himself. Lu Qing laughed and couldn't help but shake his head. His mood was inexplicably better. The depression from losing the match had dissipated. If there were miracles every time, it wouldn't be a miracle. Being able to enter the top 16 while surrounded by first pin and titled mighty ones was enough. Of course, this is only a temporary satisfaction. Wait until next year, I will take a step further. As for the King competition in December and the Superclass competition in early January, I won't participate in them. I'll leave more time to learn all the physical invulnerability chapters and solve all the problems I found in the Master Battle. Reinvigorated, Lu Qing sat on the sofa and watched the upcoming showdown between the strongest while chatting with Ku, who was on her way to the campus of Connecticut University. Halfway through, he switched to the group chat and tagged Peng Liyun and the others. It's time to consider what to eat. You adjusted so quickly. And Chaoyang seemed to have been paying attention to this all along. Soon, he sighed with emotion. Against an opponent like the clown, the chances of the weak defeating the strong is very slim. But if the gap between the two sides isn't too big, then it's possible to set up a trap for the clown's desperate fighting style. Peng Liyun discussed the battle earlier with great interest. Yes, those who are good at swimming will drown, and those who are good at riding will fall. The strongest and most commonly used method is often the source of failure. Renli replied in a genteel manner. In the end, she added, my master just used the clown as a case study to educate me. After discussing for a while, Lu Qing saw the food pictures that little fairy had deliberately sent. He quickly emphasized in the group chat, shouldn't the focus of our discussion be what to eat? I know a food blogger who lives in Juku. Let me ask her. Peng Liyun seemed to have just remembered that there was a serious matter. You know a food blogger? Priest, which part of you looks like a foodie? Are you having an affair? Lu Qing asked in surprise. Peng Liyun answered seriously, back then, when I was browsing Weibo, I suddenly thought of some problems. I wasn't paying attention, so my hand slipped and I followed her. I wanted to unfollow her immediately, but she sent me a private message excitedly, saying that she likes martial arts very much and has been following me all this time. I was too embarrassed to unfollow her. Later, we would chat for a bit and share our Weibo posts. You don't have to say any more. An explanation is a cover-up, and a cover-up is the truth. Lu Qing teased Peng Liyun with an evil smile. I really don't. I don't know her that well. Peng Liyun quickly replied and seriously emphasized. TSK, priest is still an innocent little boy. When it comes to this kind of topic, the veteran would either change the topic and not dwell on it, or joke with himself. Basically, he wouldn't explain seriously. Amidst his teasing, Lu Qing wisely stopped the topic and tagged and Chaoyang instead. Hipster, when is your flight? Tomorrow morning. And Chaoyang posted a screenshot of his flight ticket. Then let's set it for tomorrow night. Lu Qing made the final decision. At this time, Peng Liyun received a suggestion and relayed it. She said that the high autumn crab is fat, and now is the time to eat crabs. The spicy crab in Juku has a unique flavor that is different from other places. It's pretty good. She recommends fresh taste. Sure, I'm fine with it. While typing, Lu Qing recalled the different spicy crab he had eaten. Saliva formed in his mouth. Me too. Renly didn't have much opinion on food. Oh yeah, there's something. Peng Liyun added a dazed expression. When I was asking, I mentioned that we were having a meal together. She wants to join in the fun and broaden her horizons. She said that she's a loyal fan of Lu Qing and wants to get an autograph and take a picture with her idol. If you guys aren't willing, I'll turn her down. I'm fine with it. You'll be responsible for the person you brought. Lu Qing smiled rather complacently. He didn't expect that a random person he met would be his fan. This feels pretty good. Then I'd like to see what kind of girl worships Lu Qing. And Chaoyang replied, amused. You make it sound as if worshipping me is weird. Lu Qing complained. Renly emphasized, she has to promise that she won't talk nonsense in the future. After some discussion, the matter was settled. The next day, Lu Qing woke up early to train and video chat with Yan Zhika. After his afternoon nap, he planned to train for another 3 hours. He turned over and sat up. He wasn't in a hurry to get off the bed because the tent was set up very badly. As a vigorous mighty one with physical invulnerability who hadn't had his wife by his side for more than a month, such reactions and occasional thoughts were normal. Taking a deep breath, he calmed his mind and controlled his body. Very quickly, Lu Qing returned to normal. He changed his clothes and headed to the training room attached to the hotel. At 6:30 p.m., he asked Amen to book a car. He arrived at Ipin fresh and found a private room. Pushing the door open, he immediately saw a fresh beauty with medium-long straight hair wearing a thin white sweater and Peng Liyun, who was staring blankly at the girl beside him. Obviously, there's no adultery. Lu Qing was slightly disappointed. The beauty with light makeup, clear eyes, and pink lips stood up. She extended her hand with a smile. I'm Peng Shi, your loyal fan. I like the miracles you've been creating. I like your struggle and perseverance. Her breasts were very impressive. When she stood up, she even trembled a little. Lu Qing didn't look sideways. He extended his right hand and lightly bumped it with Peng Shi. He smiled and said, my pleasure. At this moment, Renli and Chaoyang came in from outside. Peng Shi introduced herself again. At the end, she said self-deprecatingly, I didn't expect you guys to be so close in private. When I heard about it, I was very curious. Plus, my idol is here, so I shamelessly came to get a free meal. I hope you guys don't mind. I won't tell anyone about what we talked about today. Girls who like to make fun of themselves were never annoying. And Chaoyang nodded in agreement. Renli glanced at Peng Shi's breasts, then retracted her gaze. She looked a little lost. Then, she sat in the seat furthest away from Peng Shi. After ordering spicy crabs, steamed hairy crabs, and many other signature dishes, Peng Shi took the initiative to start a conversation. She smiled and said, I was browsing Weibo and saw a reporter suggesting to hold a Heavenly Sun competition for you guys, Wisdom King, and Living Buddha to choose the strongest Heavenly Sun. I feel that this is a provocation. What do you guys think? Not interesting. Renli shook her head. I feel that our opponents aren't limited to such a small area. There's no point in talking about a Heavenly Sun competition when you're a physical invulnerability expert. If you're capable, you should get the title. My opponents aren't just Wisdom King, Living Buddha, and Priest. There's also the Clown, Spear King, Dong Baxian, Taoist Sword, Warrior Sage, Dragon King, and many other mighty ones. That's right. Peng Liyun came back to his senses and nodded in agreement. And Chaoyang smiled bitterly. I feel like I don't have the right to speak. As they chatted, the dishes were laid out. The steamer basket with the hairy crabs was also served. Peng Shi picked one up, dissected it skillfully, and divided it into different parts. She passed it to Peng Liyun. Try it. Although it's not a local specialty, it's not bad. Thank you, Peng Liyun replied politely. Then, Peng Shi dissected another one and passed it to An Chaoyang. Thank you. The taste is quite authentic. An Chaoyang, who was in Huahai, smiled. After that, Peng Shi picked up another hairy crab and dissected it skillfully. Then, she placed it on Lu Cheng's plate. My idol, try it. She smiled like a flower. Lu Cheng glanced at the crab on the plate and smiled subconsciously. Thank you. You peeled it really well. After saying that, he suddenly froze. He felt that this sentence and this scene were very familiar. In an instant, bits and pieces came back to him. He remembered the scene from back then. Back then, Cuckoo was peeling the crab for him and teaching him the Yanshi routine. Not bad. It's quite delicious. Wrong answer. 0 points. You should say, you peeled it really well. That's the correct answer. The past was vivid in his mind. Every word entered his ears. For a moment, Lu Cheng was in a daze like Peng Liyun. Hearing his answer, Peng Shi was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled and said, You're a little different from what I thought. One look and you can tell that he's the type that knows how to please girls. Lu Cheng collected his thoughts, smiled and shook his head. He focused on eating the crab. Peng Shi peeled one for Renli. Renli politely picked up the intact hairy crab in the steamer basket and threw it into the air. When the crab fell, Renli raised her finger and rapped it with a breeze. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The crab shell fell piece by piece. The white crab meat and attractive crab roe flew out and fell on Peng Shi's plate, piled up neatly. I'm not very good at peeling crabs. That's all I can do. Renli picked up the napkin and wiped her fingers. Well, courtesy demands reciprocity. Peng Shi was a little dumbfounded. After a long time, she smiled and said, I want to shout, Coach, I want to learn martial arts. After filling their stomachs, it was late at night. Peng Shi started the car and proposed to send Lu Cheng and the others back to the hotel one by one. My assistant is already here. Lu Cheng said perfunctorily. Peng Liyun and the others also politely refused. After everyone left, he put his hands in his pockets and wore glasses. He strolled on the road full of fallen leaves. After walking for a while, he remembered to take a taxi back. Chapter 647. In the hotel room, Lu Cheng stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the starry river of lights in the distance. His mind was calm and relaxed as he thought about the crab and Yanjika. Many details, with the passage of time, only left a vague image, but the substance had already become instinctive, becoming a conditioned reflex. Usually, one would not feel anything, but when the familiar scene hit, everything would suddenly become clear, vivid in one's mind, and one would feel the depth and meaning of the traces. These were the foundations of the building. He quietly watched for a while and calculated the time when the girls' class ended. He picked up his phone, typed a line, and silently deleted it. After 3 times, he opened his mouth with a bitter smile. There's something I don't know if I should tell you. If I tell you, I'm afraid you'll feel sad and pressured. If I don't tell you, I'm afraid you'll think I've become cold and not passionate enough. Yanjika was packing up her books and moving to another classroom. She suddenly saw this line and replied with a confused expression. What's the matter? Just tell me. I'm mentally strong. What's wrong with Cheng? Lu Cheng's lips curled up slightly. He typed word by word. It's about how I miss you very much. Yanjika was speechless. Her lips pursed into a smile. Half puzzled and half happy, she asked, Why do you suddenly miss me? When I had a meal with Hipster and the others, the priest brought a girl over. She was a food blogger and very good at peeling crabs. She peeled crabs for everyone. At that time, my reply was, "Thank you, you peeled them very well. I remember you taught me this." Lu Qing described what had happened in a concise and comprehensive manner. He didn't say why he missed her, only that he remembered it. "You've mastered it well." Yen Zhika felt her heart soften. All her emotions were settled. The 4 words, "I miss you very much," were no longer empty. They had concrete and deep support. Without waiting for Lu Qing to reply, she added, "Yesterday, I saw a black junior wearing a feather coat and a star crown in the corridor. This has become a trend in school, so, I miss you very much too. Why didn't you say so before?" Lu Qing understood what she was implying. Yen Zhika replied, proudly looking at the sky expression, "I'm just worried that someone will be impulsive and directly book a flight here. In the past, it would definitely be like this. Now, I can only enter the country once every half a year. Furthermore, they couldn't use it for more than 10 days at a time. This was the restriction imposed on physical invulnerability experts." "You're right." Yen Zhika sent an emoji of sitting in a daze. Suddenly, she felt an urge to take out her notebook and timetable and look through her schedule. She wanted to go back to China for the weekend and give someone a surprise. In certain matters, she had always possessed great courage and a strong drive for action. After flipping through it again and again, her expression suddenly fell. This was because in the first year of learning from the master, her schedule was packed. There were too many investigations and research to complete on the weekends. This was also the way she had chosen to graduate early. Sigh. She stood up and turned into a nearby public restroom. Standing in front of the sink, she took off her black-rimmed glasses and splashed cold water on her face. Raising her head, she looked at her beautiful face in the mirror. Yen Zhika suddenly reached out and pressed the corners of her eyes. Sticking out her tongue, she made a face for herself. This was her favorite face when she was young. "It's all your fault." She stared at the opposite and muttered. After a few days, the main competition of the master battle came to an end. Warrior sage, Qian Donglu, had obtained the right to challenge Dragon King. The 2 of them would have another showdown during the spring festival. After flying back to Huadu, Lu Qing didn't rest that day. After a slight adjustment, he instructed Alman to inform the driver to pick him up at the villa. It was 2 in the afternoon and Connecticut was quiet. It would be a waste if he didn't use this time to practice martial arts. Furthermore, after the master battle, he had a lot of questions to answer. At 2:50 p.m., the luxurious and spacious nanny van stopped at the entrance of the villa by Shepe Lake. Lu Qing sat in the back and glanced at Alman, who hadn't put down her luggage. He smiled and said, "You go back first and have a good rest. I don't have anything to do today. I'll just train for 2 or 3 hours. Just let old Zhao wait." Old Zhao was the driver, Zhao Zhenhua. Alman shook her head with a radiant smile. "I can rest at the club and I don't have to cook or order takeout." "That's good." Lu Qing didn't insist. He leaned back and closed his eyes, as though he was resting. Seeing this, Alman carefully took out a book from her bag and started reading seriously. She would take notes on her phone from time to time. After spending some time with the assistance of other physical invulnerability mighty ones, she had learned how to learn by herself and not waste time. This also stemmed from a small obsession in her heart. Although no one would badmouth her in front of her, there would always be people gossiping behind her back, thinking that she had sold her body to become a professional assistant. As for who she sold her body to, no one would dare to say it out loud, but the answer was self-evident. Because of this, the joy of her change in life lessened. She didn't even share it with her parents and best friends. She only told them that she had been promoted, got a raise, and was shining brightly in an important position in the club. "I want to be a truly outstanding assistant." Alman clenched her fist. In the stable car, which barely shook, she would read a book or put on her earphones to watch related videos. Due to a car accident, half of the road was blocked. Lu Qing took half an hour to reach the club and the exclusive training ground. Other than the public areas, there were 10 secret spaces, each sealed by a metal door. This allowed each physical invulnerability mighty one to enjoy their own space and not disturb each other. As soon as he pushed open the door of the training ground, he saw a figure standing upright. He was wearing a navy blue martial arts suit, standing in the bright afternoon sun. Although his face was full of sweat and he couldn't hide his tiredness, he had the temperament of an immovable mountain. This was the Dragon King, Qin Chitao. Even though the other physical invulnerability mighty ones in the club weren't around, he didn't relax his standards. As though he had already sensed Lu Cheng's approach, Qin Chitao wasn't surprised. He only nodded slightly as a form of greeting. He strode towards the corridor leading to the volcano laboratory. When he brushed past Lu Cheng, he paused for a few seconds and said sternly, "During this time, practice 9 rotations of 5 flames again." Huh? Lu Cheng was a little confused. The 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the Sun was an external invulnerability secret art. Due to its compatibility with the cosmic style, Lu Cheng didn't dare to say that he was comparable to the Dragon King. However, in terms of precision and ease of control, he was superior to veteran fire sect mighty ones like Optimus Prime Long Zhen. It was a work he was proud of. Why do I have to practice again? Qin Chitao put his hands behind his back and said in a deep and heavy voice, "You relied on cultivation techniques to omit the complicated control techniques in 9 rotations of 5 flames. These things won't help you better use 9 rotations of 5 flames, but they can improve your control of various flames. This is the foundation of the basics. Some shortcuts can be taken, but some things can't be saved." As soon as he finished speaking, the Dragon King strode forward again and walked past Lu Cheng. The size and shape of each step were the same as the previous one. It was as though he was copying and pasting. Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. He quickly understood that he had almost neglected the most important foundation. He hurriedly turned around and saluted the Dragon King's back. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." Qin Chitao didn't turn around, stop, or look back. It was as though he hadn't said anything. After watching the Dragon King disappear around the corner of the corridor, Lu Cheng left the training ground and changed his route to the physical invulnerability training room. He started practicing 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the Sun again. After an entire afternoon of hard training, Lu Cheng used a towel to wipe the water droplets off his forehead. He changed into fresh clothes and headed to the restaurant to eat, just like he did most of the time in Huacheng. At 7 in the evening, he returned to the villa. After sending Alman and the driver Zhao Zhenhua away, Lu Cheng chatted with Kai Zongming, Jiang Fei, and the rest on QQ until Little Fairy finished her morning exercise. "Cheng, before I went to bed last night, I saw an invitation for a luxurious tour group. It's going to Huacheng," Yenjika said excitedly. "So?" Lu Cheng asked back, pretending to be confused. "Kuku will only be back during the winter break. I'll be the tour guide then." "Seriously?" Yenjika said. "You've been in Huacheng for a few months. Haven't you thought of bringing uncle and auntie here for some fun? Didn't you say that they had a hard time and had almost never traveled before? Sign them up for a tour group and let them have a look around Huacheng. They won't be staying at a hotel but at home. Alman can get a driver to pick them up. You don't have to go through so much trouble. Just spend time with them when you're home every day." Lu Cheng was stunned for a while. Who exactly is their child? I've never thought of such a thing. I was thinking of going back home for a few days in December. Men aren't as attentive as girls in this aspect. Tisk, it's good that you have such self-awareness. Ask uncle and auntie if they're free from November 27th to December 7th. The tour group is only for 7 days. Leave 2 days before and after to let them get familiar with our house. We can even make you a dinner of love anyway, you can book the plane tickets yourself." Yenjika said proudly. Lu Cheng's lips curled up a little. Then, he emphasized with a smirk, "Call them Mom and Dad." Chapter 648. After chatting with Yan Zhika, Lu Qing checked the time and immediately called his mother, Qi Fang. Didn't you just call back to Huaqing at noon? What's the matter? Qi Fang was not at all happy to receive her son's call. Instead, she was full of disdain. The TV series she was following had its finale today. Lu Qing forgot to explain the cause and effect and blurted out, "Mom, can you and Dad find time from November 27th to December 7th? Why are you asking this?" Qi Fang asked in surprise. She shifted her gaze from the TV screen to Lu Jisheng beside her. "Ke wants to sign you up for a tour in Huaqing. You don't have to buy anything. Haven't I settled down here for a few months? I've been so busy practicing martial arts that I forgot to ask you two to come visit and live here for a while. It was Ke's reminder that reminded me of this." "Seriously, haha." Lu Qing laughed dryly, trying to belittle himself and elevate his wife. Qi Fang was stunned for a few seconds as she digested the information. Then she smiled and said, "You are not even as filial as a daughter. Zhika is such a good girl. I always wanted to give birth to a daughter. How sweet. Who knew I would give birth to a debt collector like you? But if it really is a daughter, I wonder how happy your second uncle and the others will be. Mom, tell me if you're free first." Lu Qing quickly stopped his mother from changing the topic and praised himself. "Without a son like me, would there be such a good daughter-in-law? You're still breathing." Qi Fang had seen this line several times recently and subconsciously used it. "I'm fine with anything. I can ask for leave at any time. But I have to ask your dad." "Hey, Cheng, you don't have to sign up for a tour. Your dad and I will stay here for a few days to see you and just wander around." She asked Lu Qing with her eyes as she spoke. Lu Jisheng was confused and did not understand what was going on. He also did not know how to answer. His face was full of confusion. "It's okay. Don't I usually train at the club? You'll be bored at home, and the surroundings are relatively quiet. There are no neighbors. Even if there are, you won't be able to understand Guangnan dialect. It's better to drink morning tea with the tour guide, try Guangnan cuisine, eat seafood, and visit interesting places. If you don't understand something, he'll translate and solve it. Everything will be easy and simple." Lu Qing didn't choose his words carefully. He just said whatever came to his mind. "You and my dad haven't traveled before except for Gaofen. Let's give it a try. That's to watch your competition. Your father used to run around a lot, but he was just working for others." Qi Fang pondered for a moment, and her thoughts were stirred. "Lu Yanwei is doing well with Erzi, isn't he? He's getting married in the spring festival, so your second uncle and the others can relax." During the National Day holiday, he went to Kaiyun province for a trip. When he came back, he showed off to the people in the factory for quite a while. That factory had been closed down for many years, but Qi Fang was still used to calling her former neighbors that way. "That's right. They're all going on a trip. You can't fall behind." Lu Qing tried to provoke his mother. Qi Fang took a deep breath and said, "All right, it's settled then. You're not going to ask my dad?" Lu Qing was stunned. "Him? He has no objections. What's the point of saving up so many years of leave?" Qi Fang answered firmly. Lu Jisheng, who was beside her, went from confused to dumbfounded. "That's not what you said just now." Lu Qing complained in his mind, but didn't beat around the bush. He said directly, "All right, I'll get Ke to sign up. Mom, remember to take a picture of you and my dad's ID cards and send it to me on WeChat. I'll help you book all kinds of tickets." Okay. "Hey, Cheng, go ahead and sign up. Don't let Ke spend money. Her family is well off, but we're not poor either, right? You're already a mighty one with physical invulnerability. You're not married yet, so you have to be careful in this aspect," Qi Fang reminded him. "Mom, don't worry. I'll give her the money." Lu Qing replied, amused. Not to mention the close relationship between Cuz Alipay and his own, the most important financial power was in her hands. Her credit cards and online payment accounts were now tied to his own bank card. She was also in charge of family finances. There wasn't much discussion. After they got married, she took the initiative to do it herself. Chi Fong was relieved. Then, she said anxiously, "Your dad and I have never been on a plane before, so we don't understand. What should we do when the time comes?" "It's very simple. I'll teach you when you get to the airport. You have to trust my dad's IQ." Hearing Chi Fong's question, Lu Qing suddenly sighed. Dad and Mom had been busy all their lives worrying about their family. They hadn't really enjoyed themselves, and this was even their first time on a plane. If it really didn't work out, he could ask Almond to accompany them throughout the journey. After hanging up the phone, Lu Qing reported the situation to Yenjika. She immediately chose the most expensive and best tour. She even chatted with the customer service and made many requests, not minding adding money. Inviting her parents-in-law to Huaqing was a good thing. However, if she was fussy about things like cost-performance ratio and made the trip unhappy, it would be a bad thing to do with good intentions. It was better not to do it. Since she was going to do it, she had to do it perfectly. While Lu Cheng was thinking of adding a burden for Almond, the assistant was standing at the entrance of Tiandu Garden, waiting for the arrival of her best friend. Her best friend was called Wang Zi. After graduation, she returned to her hometown to work in the provincial capital. Today, she was on a business trip to Huaqing and wanted to stay for 3 nights. This way, she could chat with her best friend under candlelight and chat about girls' topics. At the same time, she could save on the travel expenses of staying in a hotel. When the time came, she could get an invoice and turn it into income. 10 minutes later, a taxi stopped. Wang Zi, with her curly hair, pushed open the door and got out. Almond hurried over and helped her take out the luggage from the trunk. Wang Zi, with her thick eyebrows and bright eyes, sized up her best friend a few times and said in surprise, Man, you've become prettier. Your skin is fairer too." Almond had always been pretty. However, she didn't know how to take care of her skin when she was in university. She often participated in outdoor activities, so her skin had become a healthy wheat color. "I've been more diligent in taking care of myself recently." Almond brushed her hair and smiled humbly. Girls are more attentive to other girls and pay more attention to details. "What brand are you using? The whitening effect is so good." Wang Zi asked with great interest. Almond dragged the luggage and spoke as she walked. She didn't hide anything. "Wow, this is so expensive." Wang Zi couldn't help but look sideways at her best friend. She teased her with her unique frankness, "You really got a promotion and a raise." As they spoke, they entered the elevator and arrived at Almond's residence. 2 floors, 2 apartments. "This neighborhood is pretty high-end," Wang Zi said casually. Almond smiled and said, "The buildings over there are even more high-end. 1 floor for 1 apartment." Actually, it's 2 floors for 1 apartment." As she spoke, she opened the door and invited Wang Zi in. "The decorations are pretty luxurious." Wang Zi looked around and didn't say anything. She changed the topic and asked, Man, which room are you staying in? Your roommate won't mind if you take me in, right?" She was originally carefree and didn't care much about this, but now she was suddenly a little cautious. "No, I live alone," Almond answered concisely. Wang Zi was stunned for a few seconds and blurted out, "How much is that?" "This is Huaqing. The rent is very expensive, and this is a high-end neighborhood." Almond was stumped by the question. After thinking for a while, she smiled and said, "I don't know. The club assigned me a room after I got promoted. I don't have to pay." Wang Zi's mouth was half open. She looked around and pretended to ask exaggeratedly, Man, is your club still recruiting? Isn't this treatment a little too good?" After joking around for a while, Almond helped Wang Zi pack her luggage. "I have to hug you to sleep tonight." Wang Zi sat cross-legged on her best friend's bed. She said half curiously and half instigated, "Isn't being an assistant in Longhu Club very popular? Those inhuman mighty ones all have a high status as long as they change careers. The deputy chief of our province's police department is also an inhuman. If you have a good relationship with them, you might be able to live a good life in the future. It's useless. The members of the assistant team take turns to serve. Unless you purposely try to curry favor with them and spend a lot of effort to curry favor with them. Also, who knows how many years it will take for them to come in handy," Almond explained with a smile. Wang Zi didn't harp on this matter. After a few words, they talked about their college roommates. For example, a certain someone went back to her hometown for a blind date when she had a boyfriend in Huahai. She even slept with him and got pregnant, so they had to break up in a hurry. For example, a certain someone got married right after graduation and her child could already walk. For example, a certain someone entered a certain company and had already bought a house with a down payment, relying on her youthful vigor. Almond stayed up for half the night and went to work as usual the next day. As Lu Cheng had to leave early in the afternoon to try out an old shop, she followed him back home at around 5 p.m. to catch up on sleep. Just as she entered the house, she saw the beautifully dressed Wang Zi running around in circles anxiously. "What's wrong?" Almond asked with concern. "Boss insisted that I invite a client to Jinding Xian. That's a high-end shop, but the seats were all booked 2 days ago. He didn't know to say so earlier and just did as he pleases. No, I must change the place." Wang Zi complained about her stubborn boss. Jinding Xian. Mr. Lu had been there before and the reviews were pretty good. It was barely considered high-end. Almond thought for a while and said, "Don't worry, Guzzi. I'll help you book it." Wang Zi's nickname came from her surname. "You're going to book it?" Wang Zi was stunned. "Didn't you say that the seats were all booked? I know the manager there." Almond answered with a smile as she took out her phone and searched for a number. She met this person when she was helping Mr. Lu book a table. When the call was connected, she politely explained the whole story. The other side immediately said straightforwardly, "Miss Almond's business is my business. Just tell your friend to come over and tell him your name." "Thank you. I'll definitely treat you to a meal later," Almond said gratefully. The person laughed and said, "You're welcome. I know you're busy and have to follow Mr. Lu around every day." After hanging up the phone, Almond turned to Wang Zi and said, "All right, you just need to report my name." "Really?" Wang Zi still didn't quite believe it. Since when could Almond's name be used as a signboard in such a high-end event? At 7 p.m., she changed into a long dress and waited for the customer at the entrance of Jinding Xian. Along the way, she saw a grand sight that made her feel a little ashamed. Looking at the waiters lined up neatly to welcome her, Wang Zi said nervously, "We have booked a reservation." "We made a reservation." Almond made the reservation. "Miss Almond booked it." A waiter smiled brightly and extended his hand. "This way, please." He led Wang Zi and her customer up the elevator and into a quiet and elegant private room. Outside, the river was flowing and the lights were reflected. It was dazzling and dreamy. "Miss Wang, you seem to have a lot of connections in Huacheng." The customer looked around and praised sincerely. As a local, he knew the importance of this matter. Wang Zi had been in a daze ever since she got into the elevator. A thought kept echoing in her mind. The assistant of Longhu Club is so awesome. P.S. Mother-in-law is hospitalized for a minor surgery. I have to go and take a look. It's midnight. Chapter 649. At around 10 p.m., Wang Zi carried her bag and returned to Almond's place. She saw her best friend with her hair down and an electric toothbrush in her hand. She looked like she was about to wash up and sleep. "How did it go?" Almond asked casually. "Pretty good. We've reached an agreement of intent. I can go back and get a bonus. It's all thanks to you today." Wang Zi replied calmly with a smile. She then asked casually, "Why are you sleeping so early? Isn't it the weekend tomorrow? Do you have to work overtime?" "I don't have weekends. My boss is busy and has to go out at any time. That's why I have to keep the same schedule as him." Almond didn't try to hide it and laughed at herself. Of course, for the past few months, Mr. Liu had chosen to train in the villa's training field on the weekends. He didn't go out and didn't have anything else to do. He allowed himself to enjoy 2 days off every week like a normal employee. He's really a heartwarming boss. "Boss? Aren't you the assistant of the Longhu Club?" Wang Zi seized the opportunity to ask. Almond pondered for a few seconds before answering frankly, "Didn't I get promoted? I'm now Mr. Liu's personal assistant." "Liu Cheng." Wang Zi was stunned at first. She then blurted out with a sharp voice, "Physical invulnerability mighty one. You're the personal assistant of a physical invulnerability mighty one?" Even though she didn't pay much attention to martial arts, she had often heard of the names of physical invulnerability mighty ones, not to mention the heavenly son of the era who was in the limelight recently. "Yeah." Almond nodded solemnly. Wang Zi was stunned for a few seconds before exhaling. She muttered to herself, no wonder Man is so respected. She's the personal assistant of a physical invulnerability mighty one. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Wang Zi came to her senses and couldn't help but probe. Almond smiled bitterly. "You don't know. I felt like I'd won the lottery. I couldn't believe it and felt like I was dreaming. It was really no different from a dream. I've been fearful for the past few months and didn't have confidence. I was afraid that I'd be fired after showing off. I wanted to tell you guys after I settled down. You were randomly selected?" Wang Zi was full of curiosity. "Yes." Recalling the past, Almond still found it unreal. "I've always tried my best to perform well in front of Mr. Liu, but he was always very polite. How should I put it? He kept a clear distance from me. When he made the great leap and became a physical invulnerability expert, he picked me as his assistant. I was stunned. Do you know? I was so happy." The feelings that she had held in for months gushed out at once. No special interaction. Wang Zi was in the same state of disbelief as Almond back then. She kept feeling that there were some unknown details. It was impossible for a pie to fall from the sky, right? Even if it really fell, why didn't it hit someone else? Why did it have to hit Man? She didn't think that there was anything seductive in it. Instead, she thought of some chicken soup stories about interviews, such as how to straighten a broom after entering the door. Well, there is one thing. Didn't he leave the club with serious injuries? I've sent him messages of encouragement before, including on New Year's and birthdays, but they weren't mass messages. They were specially edited. That's the only one. Almond pondered and answered. Good people have good karma. Liu Cheng would definitely choose an assistant with good character, not someone who flatters the powerful and tramples on the weak. After a moment of silence, Wang Zi felt that she had found the answer. Then she asked in a gossipy mood, "What kind of person is he in real life?" Almond laughed and said, "I have to keep it a secret for my boss. That's the responsibility of an assistant. Well, what I can reveal is that he's really hardworking and down to earth. He's also a man who takes care of the feelings of others. It's a pity that he's already taken," Wang Zi teased casually. Then she asked, "How much do you get a month now? Are there any special benefits?" Since she knew the status of an inhuman, she wasn't unfamiliar with the lofty status of a physical invulnerability expert. And as the personal assistant of a physical invulnerability expert, Man wouldn't be bad either. Looking at the free 3 rooms and 1 living room, and how she could solve a problem that she couldn't solve with just a phone call, it wasn't hard to imagine. Almond gave a brief description, which made Wang Zi gasp in admiration. At the end of the story, Wang Zi took a deep breath and said half-jokingly, "When I go back, I can brag like them. What about my friends and classmates? You're much more awesome than what they said." Almond couldn't help but laugh. Seeing that her best friend's attitude didn't change fundamentally, she felt relieved and relieved. As Lu Qing trained hard day after day, the end of November came in the blink of an eye. At 8:30 p.m. on the 26th, he took the nanny van and arrived punctually at Huaqing Heishui Airport to pick up his parents' flight. More than 40 minutes later, he saw Qi Fang and Lu Jisheng with his sharp eyes. They were wearing down jackets to resist the cold of Shushan, and they were looking blankly at the people who were wearing thin and light clothes. Lu Qing smiled and went up to them. While describing the weather in Huaqing, he took the luggage from the old couple. At this moment, Alman and the driver, Zhao Zhenhua, rushed over and took the luggage. "Hey, girl, let him take it. He's strong," Qi Fang said politely. "Auntie, this is my job." "Do you want me to lose my job?" Alman replied jokingly. "This is my assistant, Alman. This is my driver, old Zhao." Lu Qing introduced them casually. Lu Jisheng pushed his gold-rimmed glasses and said knowledgeably, "You're acting like a boss, just like Fatty Gua. But he calls you secretary, not assistant. How can Fatty Gua compare?" The last time Qing came home, he was stuttering when he saw him. Qi Fang retorted her husband out of habit. As they chatted and laughed, the family of 3 arrived at the underground parking lot and got into the nanny van. Seeing the light brown leather sofa, the bar with famous wine, the refrigerator with drinks, and the spacious space, Lu Jisheng and Qi Fang were shocked and became a little restrained. Under Alman's arrangement, they sat down without saying much. Lu Qing saw this and shook his head with a smile. He opened the refrigerator door and took out a bottle of Shushan specialty lychee-flavored soda for his mother. He poured a cup of tea for his father and then sat opposite them. He leaned forward and tried to find a topic to talk about. "Dad, Mom, how was it? How was the flight?" Qi Fang thought for a while and said unhappily, "Your dad is really something. He says he's one of the 8 great Vajras, but he doesn't follow the rules." Before boarding the plane, he took the boarding pass and passed the security check, saying that it was a small matter. But when the plane took off, he kept grabbing the sides and refused to move. He refused to eat, drink, or go to the bathroom. His body was so tense. "Didn't I get better later?" Lu Jisheng defended himself with dissatisfaction. There were outsiders here. He glanced at Alman and saw that she was focused on looking out of the window. He was slightly relieved and then exposed Qi Fang. "Your mom is the one who's crazy. She even went to the economy class to go to the bathroom. She counted how many rows there are and asked me to help her calculate how many people can sit on the plane. Is it interesting?" "Of course it's interesting. I can't just sit on a plane in the dark like this, can I? What should I say if they ask me when I go back to Shushan?" Qi Fang glanced at Lu Jisheng. Listening to the old couple bickering, Lu Qing smiled and added a few words from time to time. The family was happy and harmonious, completely shattering the previous restraint. The car drove back to Shepei Lake and entered Lu Cheng's villa. Qi Fang took a look at the decorations and fell silent. After Alman and old Zhao left, Lu Qing led them around and identified the room. Only then did Qi Fang and Lu Jisheng relax. "It's so big, but a little lonely." Qi Fang sighed casually. She suddenly felt that her son was truly independent and moved away from his original family. She was a little happy and a little sad. "Lonely? You can stay longer." Lu Qing replied with a smile. No, your dad and I can't leave Shushan. We've become lonely old people here. You and Jika haven't had a child." Sigh, no, if you have a child, it's better to ask her mom to help. Mother and daughter can talk about anything. Conflicts can be resolved in a second. I've seen a lot of dramas like this. Qi Fang suddenly started rambling. "Mom, I just mentioned it, but you've already thought about the child." Lu Qing shook his head in amusement and changed the topic. The old couple rushed all the way and quickly washed up and went to bed. After the lights went out, the room became dark. The wind blew outside the window and the sound of water was soft in the distance. Qi Fang opened her eyes and stared blankly at the ceiling. After a long while, she suddenly sighed and said, "Cheng has really grown up, he's a man with his own family." Lu Jisheng's mouth slightly curved. After a long silence, he replied with a smile and a sigh, "Because we're old." Chapter 650. Lu Jisheng and Qi Fang arrived at the Sky Shadow Ligong Hotel in the nanny van and met up with the members of the Pure Play group. In the past 2 days, Lu Qing had reduced his training time and accompanied his parents around Shepe Lake. He took them to several shopping malls and bought a lot of clothes suitable for the season. At first, the old couple wasn't too willing to spend so much money. However, the clothes they brought were obviously too thick and wouldn't fit in outside, especially when Lu Qing deliberately didn't mention the weather in Huacheng. They had no choice but to reluctantly accept it. Later on, Qi Fang was immersed in the shopping atmosphere. She didn't need much persuasion from her son and automatically began to choose. This made Lu Qing happy to see her succeed. Occasionally, he would interact with Yan Zhika about which ones looked good, which ones were average, and which ones were unique. Needless to say, people rely on clothes. Today, Lu Jisheng and Qi Fang looked brand new and walked more briskly. When they entered the hotel lobby, they were almost dazzled by the magnificent decorations. Then, they saw a tall and thin man waving his phone over and smiling warmly. "Uncle Lu, Aunt Qi, right? I'm the tour guide Xiao Chen, Chen Zuanxian. I called you before." "Yes, yes, yes. Hello, hello. We're not late, right?" Lu Jisheng had traveled extensively before and spoke in Mandarin with a very Xing province accent. "It's still early. Let's go." Chen Zuanxian led the old couple to the lobby rest area and pointed to a short, plump girl with thick eyebrows and thick lips. "This is my partner, Qin Ran. We're in charge of the itinerary of the 10 VIPs. 10 tourists and 2 tour guides. Wasn't this too extravagant?" Qi Fang was secretly speechless. Although she hadn't traveled before, in recent years, with the development of society, many of her relatives and friends had related experiences. Her casual chats had instilled a lot of basic knowledge into her. Of course, what she didn't know was that if it wasn't for the fact that Yan Zhika felt that it was too lonely with only the old couple, she might have booked private service. "Okay, everyone's here." Qin Ran clapped her hands and said in a soft voice, "Our first itinerary today is to go to Huacheng restaurant to enjoy morning tea. This is a habit of Guangnan people. Since we're here, we can't miss it." After a heart-pounding introduction, the group of pure players took a bus and passed through the streets and alleys. They arrived at the Huacheng restaurant, which happened to be filled with large round tables. "The people here really like this." Qi Fang glanced at the bustling hall and whispered to Lu Jisheng. "Didn't you watch TV?" Lu Jisheng teased. He remembered that from a few years before his son was born until he was in the 3rd or 4th grade of elementary school, his wife especially liked TVB dramas. "How can you take all the TV series seriously?" Qi Fang glared at him, twisting words and forcing logic. At this time, steamers were placed on the table one by one, and the aroma of all kinds of snacks filled the air. Because there were outsiders around, Qi Fang did not eat as quickly as she usually did. She only picked the food in front of her. An old man sitting next to the couple heard their discussion. He picked up his tea, took a sip, and asked with a smile, "What's the matter? Are you from Xing province?" His hair was almost completely white, but he was very hale and hearty. His dressing was very classy. "Yes." Lu Jisheng nodded and answered. Qi Fang did not speak Mandarin, so she felt a little inferior in this kind of communication. She only listened and did not speak. "Did your child sign you up for the group?" the old man asked again with a smile. He casually picked up a steamed chicken claw with abalone juice and placed it on the plate. Lu Jisheng swallowed the shrimp dumpling in his mouth and said, "Yes, he signed us up for the group online. We don't know much about this. I see that you didn't stay in this hotel." The old man looked like a businessman who liked to find topics to talk about. My child is in Huacheng. He stays at his place at night and comes to meet us in the morning. He thinks that he is too busy and is afraid that we have nothing to do at home, so he formed a group for us to travel around. Lu Jisheng deliberated over his words. The old man chuckled and said, same for us. My child signed us up for the group. I feel that my child's mother and I have been busy our whole lives. Now that they have taken over, we can relax and take advantage of the fact that our legs are still good to see more and enjoy life. We can't just focus on working hard. He pointed to a woman in her 50s who was obviously plump but wore high-end clothes and bags. Don't talk about this nonsense. The woman smiled reservedly. After chatting for a while, everyone was a little more familiar with each other after breakfast. Chen Zuanxian kept running around and asking about their well-being, trying to make every tourist feel comfortable. We're going to one of the 8 sites of Huacheng next. Qin Ran saw that they had enough rest and quickly got up to introduce the group and organize the group. After a day of travel, the tired crowd returned to the Sky Shadowly Palace Hotel and listened to the 2 tour guides in the lobby about the general arrangements for the next day. Old Lu, are you going back to your child's house? The old man named Xiao Ankang was in good spirits and didn't follow the others to take the elevator to rest. Instead, he stayed in the lobby with his wife and chatted with Lu Jisheng, Qi Fang, and the 2 tour guides. Yes, he asked the driver to come and pick us up. As soon as Lu Jisheng finished speaking, Qi Fang's phone rang. She picked it up and nodded twice. She looked at the few people opposite her and smiled in a modified Xing province dialect. The car is here, we'll go first. Okay, Uncle Lu, Aunt Qi, be careful on the road. The tour guide, Chen Zuanxian, got up and sent the old couple to the door. Xiao Ankang and his wife and Qin Ran stood in place and waved goodbye. Their eyes followed the Lu couple until they reached the glass revolving door. A silver-gray nanny van slowly stopped. Xiao Ankang's pupils shrank and he blurted out, military tag. It was a very special military tag with a very small serial number. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw the car door open. A young woman in office attire stepped out and respectfully helped Lu Jisheng and Qi Fang into the car. Before the door closed, the Lu couple turned and waved at Chen Zuanxian and the 3 people in the lobby who were looking at them. Xiao Ankang and the rest numbly raised their arms in response. The gap gradually disappeared. The silver-gray nanny van started up again and disappeared from their sight. Old Lu's family isn't simple. After a long while, Xiao Ankang sighed. But they didn't seem to be anything special at all. 7 to 8 days of touring Huacheng passed by in the blink of an eye. Lu Jisheng and Qi Fang stayed for a few more days. Feeling bored, they flew back to Shushan as if they were fleeing for their lives. Lu Qing started counting down the days until his little fairy's winter break. Just as he had mastered all the physical invulnerability chapters of the Ice Sect and Fire Sect, he received a message from the military. Lin Ke, who was in a war-torn zone, has gone missing. P.S. Came back late, so this chapter has fewer words. Chapter 651. Lin Ke is missing. Missing in the war-torn zones. Lu Qing, who had just finished his training and was resting on the sofa, suddenly straightened his back. His slightly muddled mind suddenly cleared up, as though someone had splashed a bucket of ice water on him. Following that, worry, anxiety, and other emotions came one after another, filling up his thoughts. It made him forget to condense the ice heart and remain calm. Missing, in the war-torn zones is often equivalent to death. He quickly typed out a reply and inquired about the specific situation. While waiting, he felt like he couldn't sit still. He stood up abruptly and paced around the spacious room. Many images of the past flashed through his mind. Lin Ke, who said sorry painfully when he lost to Zhou Zhenquan. Lin Ke, who had a unique dry sense of humor. Lin Ke, who was cold on the outside but proud on the inside. Lin Ke, who had awakened his supernatural ability prematurely and severely injured Peng Liyun. He smiled innocently and begged with, "I've tried my best. I'll leave the rest to you." He wasn't just his brother-in-law. He was also a friend who had worked hard, struggled, suffered, and experienced ecstasy together. After a few seconds, the military contact sent a detailed report. Lin K has been missing in Tigny City, Tallinn for more than 48 hours. Confirmed by a physical invulnerability expert who majored in the unique arts of the plague sect, he's not dead yet. His exact whereabouts are unknown. The sky-leaning sword and seven-star couple from Shushan study are on their way. Lu Qing glanced over and found the main point. He felt much more at ease. At the same time, he made a decision. He would apply for leave and head to the war-torn zones to help search for Lin Quebec. In the past, he probably wouldn't have done this because he wasn't strong enough. Blindly helping would be a waste of manpower and resources. But now, he had made the great leap and achieved physical invulnerability. He had even mastered all his martial arts. Regardless of whether he was a relative or a friend, he had to go. After making up his mind, he furrowed his brows and felt troubled. Should I tell Ku about this? If I tell her now, she'll be worried all the time. Days will feel like years. She'll be mentally tormented and her daily life will be affected. But if I keep it from her and tell her after the results are out, I'll have to make up a lie to cover it up. This is something I've made a promise and I don't want to do, unless it's to surprise her. From Ku's perspective, with her personality and mindset, she'll definitely be able to accept it. She doesn't want to be kept a secret, especially from the person who's closest to her. A husband and wife should be able to share and share. He switched to the interface where he was chatting with Yen Zhika. He chose his words carefully and said, "Cuckoo, I have to go to the war-torn zones." It was past 4 in the morning in Kingstown. The girl was still asleep, and the news sank like a stone in the ocean. Lu Qing didn't wait for a reply. As he lamented about the time difference, he opened the door and headed for Empress Luo's office. She happened to be here today, so there was no need to call. As he passed by the elevator, Lu Qing saw the door of the sedan chair and the carriage slowly open. Walking out was Optimus Prime, Long Zhen, covered in blood, charred, and grime. He must have failed in his challenge to the Dragon King and got a good beating. Lu Qing nodded thoughtfully. If it was in the past, he would definitely laugh at the other party. But now, he was not in the mood at all. After a silent greeting, he went to Ning Zitong's door and knocked 3 times. After getting permission, he pushed the door open and entered. Lu Qing briefly explained what had happened to Lin K and then brought up the matter of applying for leave. "You don't have to." Ning Zitong frowned slightly. "Our physical invulnerability experts are required to cooperate with the military every year. How about this? Treat it as your mission for the second half of the year." "Thank you, Sister Ning." Lu Qing didn't argue. He immediately turned to leave, intending to communicate with the military as soon as possible. Ning Zitong tapped the table lightly and reminded him, "The war-torn zones aren't just a few dozen countries. Your master knows a lot about this. Remember to ask him for advice. Don't be careless." "Okay." Lu Qing nodded gratefully. With this reminder, he didn't rush to contact the military. Instead, he called his master. "You want to help find Lin K?" asked Shi Jiangwo directly. He looked like he knew everything about the martial arts world even though he wasn't in it. Lu Qing answered, "Yes." He quickly asked, "Master, haven't you been roaming the war-torn zones for many years? I'd like to ask about the situation there." "Brat, you've come to the right person. I've watched that place develop bit by bit into what it is today. Most of the famous mighty ones who rule over a region used to tremble in fear at the mention of my name." Geezer sure reminisced about the past and rambled on for a while before getting to the point. He said, "The war-torn zones are a general term for many countries. The east reaches the ocean, the north reaches the south of China, the west faces the Nile Straits, and the south reaches the polar regions. There are dozens of countries where the political situation is unstable. After today, there may not be tomorrow. The war-torn zones were initially caused by regional power struggles and resource grabs. When the strong and mighty ones were tired of fighting, they naturally looked for a peaceful solution. Unfortunately, the United States, Europe, Japan, and other major powers interfered, and the chaos lasted for decades. Chaos is a disaster for the local people. I didn't go to school, but I've heard that it's better to be a dog in peace than a man in troubled times. However, to the major powers, this is a good way to fish in troubled waters. They don't have to worry about the people's lives. As long as they work with the mighty ones, they can immediately obtain the maximum amount of resources. After the mighty ones maintain peace, they will quickly gain the support of the public. Even the worst stability is better than no order. If this continues, won't their ambitions grow? Don't they just want to get rid of their original control? Then it's another cycle. Many powers also want to maintain this situation. Other than resources, they also use the war-torn zones as a place to train their mighty ones, a base for human experiments, and an observation room for new weapons. When you're there, you can't just look at the surface. Many things are rooted in the United States and elsewhere. Tallinn is a country located in the middle of the war-torn zones. Before the split, it was one of the top countries. Their Tignes city is the center of the regional black market. There's some order, the order of the mighty. Currently, there are many physical invulnerability mighty ones in the war-torn zones, and even more of them are active there. With your current level, I'll only give you a word of advice. Don't mess with the stars, and avoid the gods. What does that mean? The custom there is that after becoming a top-notch mighty one, they will give themselves nicknames like stars or mythical figures. For example, Venus, Moon, Pluto, Zeus, and so on. If you make a name for yourself, you can give yourself one too. What did I give myself back then? Sigh, a real man doesn't talk about his past achievements. Geezershire only ended the call reluctantly when his phone was almost out of battery. Lu Qing went over the key points, contacted the military, and arranged the itinerary. When all this was done, Yenjika woke up from her biological clock. She asked with a confused expression, "What's the matter?" "Something happened to your brother. His whereabouts are unknown. I'm going to help look for him." Lu Qing tried his best to describe it in a casual tone. Yenjika's sleepy expression instantly collapsed. Her clear eyes widened as if she had been pricked by a few needles. "Whereabouts are unknown. Do you know what happened?" She couldn't help but ask. "I'm not sure at the moment. We're waiting for further investigation." However, the military's physical invulnerability mighty one who practices the unique skills of the plague sect confirmed that your brother is still alive. Lu Qing sent a patting head emoji. "Don't worry. Grandpa and Grandma are on their way. I'm here too. Your brother will be fine." Yeah. Yenjika replied while nodding vigorously at the dusk of the morning. She took a deep breath and told herself that there was no point in being nervous. She might as well focus on training and throw herself into the heavy workload of schoolwork to calm down. She couldn't let her panic affect Chang's state of mind and make him take risks to improve. After giving his instructions, Lu Qing took a car to the military airport on the outskirts of Huacheng. He planned to fly directly to Jelangang, which was near Tallinn. This was a relatively orderly city in the Federation and had close ties with China. At 7:15 p.m., the temporarily arranged plane soared into the clouds. It first headed north, then south. In the entire cabin, other than the pilot, Lu Qing, and an officer were the only ones in sight. As the lights dimmed, the environment became quiet and oppressive. After flying deep into the war-torn zones for an unknown period of time, Lu Qing, who was resting with his eyes half closed, suddenly opened his eyes. "Change flight route. There's danger ahead." Chapter 652. Change the flight route? The officer at the side was stunned at first, then his pupils constricted. He hurriedly contacted the pilot in the cockpit. He clearly remembered that on the profile of this physical invulnerability mighty one, the words, able to foresee danger, were written. This wasn't a reason to believe it, but an objective description based on the accumulation of facts. Soon, the plane deviated from its original route and took a big detour. After a few minutes, they received a warning from the main station that there were two groups of forces fighting ahead. They had used fighter jets, bombers, anti-aircraft guns, and surface-to-air missiles. They had to avoid the airspace to avoid being affected. The reason they were called two groups of forces was because not every area in the war-torn zones had a country. Rebel forces and sects imitating China might have controlled a large area, but they hadn't officially established a country. After listening to the main station's description, the officer couldn't help but sneak a glance at Lu Cheng, as though he was looking at an unscientific existence. This kind of premonition was still a blank space in modern technology. It was better to see it with your own eyes than to hear about it 1,000 times. Lu Cheng had already closed his eyes and refocused to deal with unexpected situations in the war-torn zones. At dawn, the plane landed in Zhelangang. Military personnel stationed here welcomed them. Lu Cheng asked for a satellite phone and told Yan Zhika that he was safe. Then he looked around and asked in a deep voice, "Have Old Master Ji and the rest of the Shushan study arrived?" The two seniors, Heaven Leaning Sword and Seven Star, are already on their way to Tigny's city in Tallinn. The leading officer, Wang Feiyun, answered honestly. "I've made a copy of everything they asked and looked through." As he spoke, he took out a stack of documents from his suitcase. "Thank you." Lu Cheng nodded and took them. He sat in the back of the camouflage jeep and carefully read the documents in his hands, looking for clues that might be hidden in them. The last time Lin Ke came here was 5 days ago. After reading for a while, he asked thoughtfully. Zhelangang was China's base camp in the center of the war-torn zones. Experts who ventured out to the surrounding areas to train themselves would use it as a base to heal, recuperate, replenish their resources, or obtain information. Lin Ke was no exception. "Yes." Wang Feiyun pondered for a moment and said, "He brought back a group of people. This may be related to what he has done in the past few months." Lu Cheng closed the file and tapped the paper with his right index finger. "Take me there." There were indeed relevant records in the documents, including the information that Lin Ke had asked for before and after. They almost formed a complete picture of the incident. However, if he went to take a look and ask the person involved, he might be able to gain more information. Anyway, Ku's grandparents had already gone to Tigny's, so he didn't need to be in such a hurry. "Okay." Wang Feiyun agreed readily. In Zhelangang, China had its own military base and airport, which was where Lu Cheng had just arrived at. At this moment, the jeep drove away from the main gate, passing through the quiet and deserted streets in the morning light. Bullet holes could be seen on the walls, indicating that this wasn't a particularly peaceful place. When they arrived at the Chinese relief organization in the south of the city, Wang Feiyun led Lu Cheng to a building in the back. "Their mental conditions are very poor. Some even show signs of autism," he said, pointing at a large door. Through the window, Lu Cheng saw children who were no longer as lively as they were in their childhood. He saw women with blank gazes, and many men who were so quiet that they seemed to have lost their souls, only responding when stimulated. Even with Lu Cheng's current willpower, he couldn't bear to look at those ignorant and empty eyes. He asked Wang Feiyun to find 2 men who were in better condition and asked about what had happened. At this point, he basically understood what Lin Ke had been doing in the past few months. He was tracking down an international human trafficking organization rooted in Tigny's. Working with other mighty ones, he had interrupted several of their transactions, causing them to suffer heavy losses. As a result, this mafia organization had kept a low profile. Without more clues, Lin Ke had no choice but to go to Tigny's again, partly to hone his skills and partly to investigate. Was he retaliated against, or did he follow the clues only to run into a big tiger? Lu Cheng muttered to himself, deep in thought. He didn't expect a cold, introverted, and taciturn man like brother-in-law to do such a chivalrous thing, risking his life to do it, in a fully enclosed room shimmering with metallic luster. Lin Kei's 4 limbs were powerless as he lay on the bed covered with white cloth. His hands and feet were shackled, from which silver-white bone spurs protruded and pierced into his muscles and bones, staining him dark red with blood. His dark pupils were slightly dilated, but there was an unyielding stubbornness in the depths of his eyes. His entire body was covered with various instruments. Increase the pain stimulus, observe the reaction of bone marrow and brain waves, extract 10 milliliters of blood, mix in reagent T305, and inject it into lab rat number 106, cut the muscle 3 centimeters deep, apply reagent T246, record the rejection and recovery reaction process, pay attention to the data collection, pause, give lab rat number 19 time to recover and organize the previous data. Cold and emotionless voices entered his ears. Waves of unbearable pain hit his body. Lin Kei felt like he was being cut into pieces, and he wished he could pass out immediately. But he stubbornly held on. In a daze, he felt like he was in hell. If not for the lack of strength, he would have bitten his lips. Finally, the torture came to an end. He forced himself to examine his body and heal his wounds until he passed out completely. Zhelangang, China's military base. Lu Qing used the satellite phone to contact Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning, who had already arrived in Tigny's city. "You're here too," said Ji Jianzhang, gratified. "Then hurry over as soon as possible. Don't make a big fuss, lest some people do something desperate and do something unsalvageable. When you arrive, we'll split up and save time." At first, Lu Qing didn't understand. After thinking for a while, he understood why Old Master didn't want to make a big fuss. His brother-in-law had left the stage of attention before reaching the inhuman stage. He had a bit of a reputation, but it wasn't resounding enough. In the past 2 years, he had been on the verge of being forgotten. Therefore, his details wouldn't be taken seriously by the intelligence agencies of various countries. It was only natural that the organizations in the war-torn zones wouldn't know about his background. If they realized that kidnapping him would attract at least 3 physical invulnerability mighty ones, there would only be 2 choices left. They could either use a hostage and negotiate for a better outcome, or they could kill him to silence him and erase all traces of their brother-in-law's whereabouts and make him disappear from the face of the earth. This possibility wasn't low. Of course, Old Master and Old Madam weren't willing to take the risk. They wanted to confirm the clues before sweeping the area with lightning speed. Phew! Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief. After sharing the latest situation with his wife, he put away his satellite phone and asked for a map of Tallinn and Tigny's. Without further delay, he left Zhelangang. Measuring the distance by foot was faster and more agile than any off-road vehicle. In the afternoon, when the sun was high in the sky, he arrived at Tigny's after crossing the mountains. He went around several entrances that were guarded by fully armed personnel and snuck into the city from an impossible position. His first target was the common street that was mentioned in the information. The common street where Lin Kei had stayed for a while to recuperate from his injuries. Children in their teens patrolled the streets with automatic rifles. Their clothes were tattered, and their skin was dark. The innocence on their faces had been replaced by numbness and the occasional flash of hatred. Lu Qing concealed his aura and activated the secret arts of cultivation. Using the refraction and distortion of sunlight from the ice, he disguised himself. He walked on the streets like that. The patrolling Boy Scouts ignored him. Longhu lineage, art of invisibility. Arriving in the middle of Common Street, Lu Qing entered a run-down apartment and went up the stairs to the 3rd floor. According to the information, this was where Lu Cheng's brother-in-law used to live. His landlord was called Ji Kong. Just as he was about to knock on the door, Lu Qing sensed something. He turned sideways and used his shoulder to force his way in. Beside the window opposite him was a gorgeous woman with black hair and eyes. She seemed to have lost all her bones. Her arms and body were wrapped tightly around a bronze-skinned man. The latter was Ji Kong. With a loud crack, all the bones in Ji Kang's body broke. He breathed his last. The snake-like demonic woman smiled at Lu Cheng. She suddenly flipped backward and landed on the street. The whole process was smooth and natural, fully demonstrating her confidence in herself. Just as she landed silently, the woman immediately turned around. Her body faded, and she turned into a black shadow. She moved to a hidden spot with extreme familiarity and calmness. Just then, her vision blurred. She saw the young man from before standing in front of her, as if he had been waiting for a long time. Not good. Just as she was about to change direction, she saw Lu Cheng's palm strike coming at her. It was as fast as lightning, leaving after images. Bam! She raised her hand to block, but her face was hit by the palm along with her forearm. Her vision turned black, and she passed out without making a sound. After some time, she opened her eyes in a daze. She saw the young man from before standing in front of her with his hands behind his back. She heard his deep and dignified voice. "Why did you kill Ji Kang?" Chapter 653. Why did you kill Ji Kang? Seeing no reaction from the snake-like woman, Lu Cheng asked again in English. Anyone who could make a name for themselves in the war-torn zones had to master both English and Chinese in addition to their mother tongue. The woman, who had strangled Ji Kang with her body, tried her best to show her authority. "The organization sent me. Do you want to make an enemy out of us?" "I'm asking why, that's all," Lu Cheng replied calmly. He didn't want to waste any more time. The word army appeared in his mind. Being stared at by those cold eyes, the woman who had undergone harsh training suddenly collapsed. It was as if she could clearly smell the scent of death. It was so terrifying, so terrifying. Her tears and snot flowed uncontrollably. Her body trembled like a sieve. I'll tell you everything. Ji Kang is a bee broker in Tignes's black market. He took a batch of our organization's goods and tried to escape. The organization discovered him and sent me to deal with him. I am telling the truth. Please don't kill me. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, a cold-blooded killer cried like a little girl in despair. She felt like she had lost control of her body and soul. A broker in the black market. Consistent with the description in the information. Lu Cheng nodded slightly. What organization are you from? Star Alliance, spare me, the woman replied while sobbing. An organization that controls 3 zones and has physical invulnerability mighty ones. Lu Cheng sensed her mental state and confirmed that she had broken down. She couldn't be lying to him. It seems like Ji Kang's murder has nothing to do with Lin Kei's disappearance. It's something else. As expected of a war-torn zone. After a few seconds of silence, Lu Cheng took out his phone that had no signal and pulled up a recent photo of Lin Kei provided by the military. Have you seen this person before? The woman trembled as she looked at the photo. She shook her head hurriedly. No, I haven't. Fearing that Lu Cheng wouldn't believe her, she quickly added, You can go to the Jinwell bar on Tutten Street and ask around. They have a general behind them. It's one of the main places for information exchange in Tignes, involving many people. If the person in the photo has been to Tignes, someone there should have seen him. There was a brief mention of it in the information, but it wasn't as detailed as the rose mill that was involved in human trafficking. The Jinwell bar should be used by the lower class. Every snake has its way, and every mouse has its hole. Lu Cheng made up his mind. He walked to the entrance, opened the door, and disappeared into the dark passageway, ignoring the female killer who was lying on the ground. The female assassin watched him leave in a daze. After a long time, she came back to her senses and cried again, full of the joy and venting of surviving a disaster. She used both her hands and feet to try to stand up, but her body was trembling so much that she couldn't exert any strength. With a bang, she fell back down again. Her face was covered in dirt, and her body was covered in dirt. At this moment, clear footsteps came from the corridor. Devil? That devil is back. The female assassin's pupils shrunk, and her hair stood on end. She felt as though electricity had passed through her tailbone. She forgot about the soreness and weakness she felt earlier. She jumped up, ran out of the window, and jumped out. Bam! She couldn't stand properly and fell like a gourd. She didn't know how many bones she broke, but she forced herself to crawl into the small alley. Her heart echoed with one thought after another. I won't go on missions anymore. This world is so scary. I want to book a counseling appointment. In the corridor, a boy with a rifle found an abandoned room and peed in it comfortably. Compared to Carmen, Tutton Street was obviously much more prosperous. Although there were many people who were tough, they weren't as austere as the group of Boy Scouts. At the entrance of the gin whale bar stood a total of 6 burly men. They didn't hide the bulge at their waists, and one of them was even holding an AK rifle upside down. Without any hesitation, Lu Qing walked over and said with an imposing manner, I want to see your boss. The 6 burly men suddenly felt a heavy burden on their shoulders. They couldn't straighten their backs. They felt that the young man in front of them was both tall and deep. His words were irresistible, and they only wanted to obey. Yes, as you wish. The blonde leader answered with trembling legs. He led Lu Qing inside. They passed through the first floor, which was packed with people, loud music, and dimly lit. They arrived at the stairs leading down. It was only then that he remembered to report. Underground, where the underground boxing competition was taking place, there was a spacious and luxurious office. Behind a steel desk sat a man in a red general's uniform. He was dignified, domineering, and stern. He wore a large brimmed hat that covered his eyes. Whenever he swept his gaze across anyone in the room, they would tremble in fear and want to kneel down and beg for mercy. And every one of these people was famous in the gin whale bar, Tutton Street, and even Tigny City. Mr. General, a guest wants to see you. A trembling voice sounded from the walkie-talkie. The man known as the general clasped his hands on the table. After a moment of silence, he said calmly, let him come over. Let's see who's looking for me by name. Lu Cheng's hands hung naturally, his index finger using the seam of his pants as a pendulum. He followed the blonde man down the stairs and found another world underground. Bypassing the ring filled with intense fights and blood, he arrived at the entrance of the office. He saw the bar owner in a red general's uniform and a large brimmed hat surrounded by more than 10 experts. It's you. Lu Qing was stunned at first, but soon smiled. This was someone he knew, the son of a Milua warlord who had defeated him in the Four Nations competition, Vagar the general. He had honed his skills in the war-torn zones for many years. He had fought with the Taoist once and indirectly helped him reach physical invulnerability. It's you. Vagar was stunned as well. His pupils constricted, like the tip of a needle, flashing silvery white. Unlike many experts in the war-torn zones who lacked external sources of information, he had long known from Miluo's intelligence channels that the old opponent before him was no longer what he used to be. He was a true general-level expert. Vagar let go of his hands that were clasped on the desk and retracted them in front of him. He seemed to be on high alert. He looked around at the experts before speaking in a deep voice, "Why are you here?" "To buy information." Lu Qing went straight to the point. Vagar narrowed his eyes and sized up Lu Qing. He couldn't see through the person he had defeated in the past. Not only couldn't he see through him, but he also felt an inexplicable fear, like an animal facing its natural enemy. What information? Vagar's tone softened instinctively. I want to know if anyone has seen this person in the past few days. Lu Qing took out his phone and showed him the information on Lin Quebec. Send me his photo. I'll get someone to ask. Seeing that it was a small matter, Vagar's body relaxed. Using the bar's LAN, Lu Qing sent the photo over. Vagar ordered his subordinates to deal with it immediately. Lu Qing didn't leave. Instead, he dragged a chair and sat beside the office door. He looked like he wasn't going to rest until he got the results. The veins on Vagar's forehead bulged and jumped, but he didn't explode in the end. After a long silence, he suddenly spoke. If I have the information you want, I hope to receive a special reward. What? Since Lu Qing proposed to buy and not rob, there was naturally room for negotiation. Vagar clenched his fists and straightened his broad back. Fight with me. I want to know how big the gap is between us. He wanted to stimulate himself and find the dawn of becoming a true general-level mighty one. No problem. Lu Qing nodded after a few seconds of silence. The two of them didn't say anything else. The office returned to silence. However, the oppressive feeling made everyone uncomfortable. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly, except for Lu Qing. After an unknown period of time, news finally came back. More than 5 guards of Jinwale Bar had seen Lin Ke 3 days ago. He was right here. He fought in an underground fight and left with injuries. He hasn't appeared since, said Vagar's subordinate, the bar owner on the surface. Injured? Lu Qing asked in surprise. Although he had only taken a quick glance, he could see that both sides of the arena fight were limited to low-ranked Dan stage fighters. The surrounding audience didn't show any disdain either. Brother-in-law was an inhuman mighty one who had awakened his supernatural ability in advance. How could he be injured in such a situation? With his strength, no one in the crowd could have done it unless Vagar went up personally or bullied him with numbers. Vagar answered on behalf of his subordinate. Coincidentally, there was a powerful guy who fought in the arena a few days ago. A very mysterious and special guy. I believe that the strength he displayed was only a part of his true strength. Who was it? Asked Lu Qing calmly. Perhaps it was because of such an opponent that brother-in-law was excited and took the initiative to challenge him. Vagar gestured for his subordinate to bring over his laptop and replayed the highlights of the previous few matches. As Lu Qing watched, he gradually frowned. Lin Ke's opponent was really strange. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He didn't have any expression from beginning to end. He was even more Lin Ke than Lin Quebec. Every punch and kick seemed to have been measured and controlled very well. He seemed to have reached the realm of, God is watching you. However, he didn't show this in other aspects. He was strong and agile. However, he gave off a lifeless and inflexible feeling. At times, he even seemed to lack the ability to feel pain. This is a little strange. Could brother-in-law's disappearance be related to him? Lu Qing suddenly had a thought. Perhaps brother-in-law's disappearance wasn't because of the revenge of the human trafficking group, but because of some other unexpected incident. Otherwise, the experts of Shushan study wouldn't be completely clueless. Who is he? Where is he? Asked Lu Qing straightforwardly. Vagar tilted his head and looked at his subordinate. On the surface, the bar owner answered, I don't know who he is or what forces are behind him. However, I know where he lives. He lives in 172 San Jose Street, an apartment on the left side of the 5th floor. Thank you. Lu Qing stood up and returned the chair to its original position. You can fulfill your payment now. Vagar stood up as well. His fists were glowing silver as if he was wearing heavy gloves. Lu Qing looked up at him. He slowly raised his arm and clenched his fingers one by one. Bam! He threw a punch. The surface of his fist condensed and absorbed the surrounding light. His body grew brighter and brighter while the office grew darker. As the darkness deepened, the temperature dropped. Just as Vagar was about to dodge, a chilly wind entered his body. He couldn't help but shiver. The white before his eyes grew brighter and brighter, filling up the entire heaven and earth. Boom! His arms were forcibly opened, and streaks of silver-white electric snakes splashed everywhere. Bam, bam, bam. Vagar was sent flying. He crashed through 3 walls and landed heavily in the dust. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. His subordinates either drew their guns or clenched their fists. They were about to surround Lu Qing. Let him go, shouted Vagar in a hoarse voice. Lu Qing didn't even look at his subordinates. He had already turned around and left with his hands in his pockets. He had learned that punch from the god-slaying saber, Lu Yongyuan. Using the uniqueness of his Starry Universe style, he had used it more harmoniously and naturally than his opponent. It had a different feel, but it lacked the dominance that came from the heart. Vagar struggled to get up and watched as his opponent drifted away. After a long while, he sighed. Is this the difference between me and him? Just one punch. Chapter 654. After leaving Jinwale Bar, Lu Qing didn't head straight to San Jose Street. He had been on the move for Lin Kei's matter and hadn't eaten or drunk anything. His mouth was dry and his stomach was growling. Although he hadn't lost his ability to fight, he wasn't in peak condition either. His next target was a little strange. He couldn't be sure what kind of danger was lurking. He had to be fully prepared. Looking at the darkening sky, he condensed a piece of ice crystal and stuffed it into his mouth. He melted it with his tongue. It was cold, refreshing, and nourishing at the same time. According to the map given by the military, there should be a small food market nearby. It's open from 6 to 8. Lu Qing muttered to himself. He scanned his surroundings slowly but didn't find any restaurants. There were less than 5 shops on the entire street that were still open. He didn't turn back to look for Vagar. Following his memory and occasionally looking at the map, he circled around to a ruin that seemed to have been bombed by a plane. The faint light of dusk shone in, blurring the shadows of the people hiding in the shadows. The stall owners came one after another from all directions and took up their assigned positions. They were fully armed and loaded with guns, for fear of encountering customers who would take risks out of desperation. Lu Qing looked as far as he could. He saw hardtack, small bags of flour, and cans with Chinese labels on them. Can you give me 2 cans of beef? A 17 or 18-year-old girl with messy hair walked past Lu Qing and stopped in front of a stall owner with a full beard. She stared at the tin box like a hungry wolf that had finally found its prey and couldn't bear to look away. With Lu Cheng's hearing, it wasn't hard to hear the sound of her swallowing. The stall owner glanced at her and chuckled in broken English. As long as you have Chinese or American notes, gold, and guns. I don't. The girl's voice trailed off. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she said, I can sleep with you. Just 2 cans of beef. The stall owner sized her up and finally said, okay, but you have to wait until the end. Can you give me one first? Asked the girl anxiously. Come over here. The stall owner pointed to the seat beside him. You have to stay with me for 2 days. Okay. The young girl walked over and took an open can with her eyes shining. She didn't care about the knife and fork. Kneeling down, she reached out and grabbed a piece of oily beef, stuffed it into her mouth, and wolfed it down. The stall owner patted her chest and buttocks as if he was measuring the goods and nodded in satisfaction. Seeing this scene, Lu Qing couldn't help but think of his cousins, Qi Yunfei, Qin Xiaoxiao, and Ma Shi. They were about the same age as the girl in front of him. They were busy with their studies. For a moment, Lu Cheng's emotions fluctuated as if there was something stuck in his throat and... The stall owner was stunned for a few seconds. Then, he quietly brought out a thick, big, and black calculator and pressed it for a long time before he got the answer. He took out his wallet and emptied it with cash. He also took some of the gold from the military to pay the bill. Taking the food wrapped in the old newspaper, he tore open a can of beef that wasn't self-heating. Just as he was about to enjoy it, the stall owner kindly reminded him, this can taste better if it's frozen. The jelly formed by the gravy, gulp. The Jinwale bar on Tutton Street has a refrigerator and its own generator. You can borrow it if you pay a little. As he spoke, the stall owner couldn't help but lick his lips. Lu Qing nodded slowly. Holding the old newspaper with the rest of the food in one hand, he quickly froze the can with the other hand. With a shake of his wrist, a piece of beef and the jelly formed by the gravy flew into the air and into his mouth. Not bad. Lu Qing turned around and left while chewing. The stall owner was dumbfounded. Starting from the cold can. He wasn't a commoner who didn't know how to get food. He knew what this meant. This was the strongest of the strongest. Who would dare to take money from such people in the market? They wouldn't have the self-awareness to pay. This was the rule of Tignes, the universal rule. After a long time, he looked at Lu Cheng's back and then at his stall. He felt lucky. Lu Cheng found a random wall at the edge of the ruins and sat down. Without wasting any time, he started eating. When there were only 2 cans left, 5 packs of compressed biscuits, and 3 bottles of drinking water left, he wrapped them up again and walked out of the market. Along the way, he saw many children staring at the passers-by with pleading eyes, hoping to get some food. Lu Qing sighed to himself and gave the rest of the food to different children. He didn't pay attention to their shocked expressions, nor did he care about the resulting disputes. This was the war-torn zone. 172 San Jose Street. The entrance was riddled with old bullet holes, and the nearby glass windows were mostly damaged. With both hands in his pockets, Lu Qing walked up the mottled stairs step by step. His posture was calm and his expression was relaxed, as if he was an invited guest. Since he had formed the ice heart, his mind could sense the situation within a dozen meters around him. For physical invulnerability experts, after connecting heaven and earth, their mind would definitely mutate and cover a wider area. Similar abilities were a common trait. However, for those who had cultivated the enemy heart freezing move, the effects would be clearer and the range would be wider. When he passed by the 5th floor, Lu Qing didn't stop and continued to climb. Just as he brushed past the 5th floor, his heart lake reflected the scenes of the walls and the rooms. A tattered sofa, a table with all kinds of empty cans, some of which had not been thrown away for a long time and were even growing hair, no one here. Lu Qing nodded thoughtfully. He made a turn on the 6th floor and returned to the ground floor. He stood in the shadows and watched the entrance. It was already late at night. The street was dark without street lights. Only the apartments on both sides were illuminated by candlelight. In China, such a street would have at least 2 barbecue stores, 1 braised food, 1 fried rice, and a 24-hour supermarket. The roadside would be filled with tables, aromas, and alcohol bottles. Such a scene can't be found now. After all, for the sake of environmental protection, for the sake of green and peace in this world, there's at most a 24-hour supermarket. Lu Qing leaned against the wall with his hands in his pockets. He thought about the deserted and dilapidated surroundings. It was the same sky, but a different life. After an unknown period of time, his eyes suddenly focused on the mysterious expert in the video. He was wearing a black trench coat. His face was expressionless, and his green eyes were like those of a wild beast. After watching him enter 172, Lu Qing wasn't in a hurry to follow. He waited for a while before stretching his muscles and decided to follow. At this moment, the mysterious expert with blonde hair and blue eyes came down again and walked to the other end of the street. Lu Cheng's heart of ice was clear. He spread his spirit and followed him from dozens of meters away with his hands in his pockets. He also used the secret method of cultivation. He turned left, walked straight, and turned right. The mysterious expert with blonde hair and blue eyes didn't seem to notice anything unusual. 10 minutes later, he came to a ruin in the suburbs. He could vaguely make out the shape of a factory. The buildings had collapsed, and the steel was scattered. Suddenly, the mysterious expert with blonde hair and blue eyes turned around like a whirlwind. His cold eyes were fixed on Lu Cheng. He can even detect this. Sure enough, it's a little weird. Lu Cheng thought calmly. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 people jumped down from the 2nd floor of the factory ruins. One was short, dark-skinned, with black hair and black eyes. The other had light yellow eyebrows and a single light blue eye. They either melted into the night or were muscular. They looked different, but they had the same temperament as the mysterious expert with blonde hair and blue eyes. Rigid, inflexible, not agile enough, strange and frightening. Seeing his companion blocking Lu Cheng's way, the expert with blonde hair and blue eyes said in a flat tone, "Detestable and troublesome stalker." After that, he looked at his two companions and continued in a monotonous voice. The Tigny Security Police's reaction time is 30 minutes, the City Defense Forces is 15 minutes, and the experts nearby are 5 minutes. Number 4, Number 6, end the battle in 5 minutes. Number 4, Number 6. Lu Cheng frowned slightly. He took out his right hand from his trouser pocket, the remaining coin in between his fingers. Clang! He flicked the coin into the air. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.